Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
One. One.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to get started in a few minutes. We're going to wait for a few more board members to join us. Thanks.
We're not quite at quorum yet, just almost.
Hey, Valerie, how are we doing on quorum?
We now have quorum.
Yeah. Hi, this is Edma.
Good. Can't
Yes.
hear anybody. Is that just me?
Yeah, okay.
I can hear you. I can hear Ed.
Okay, let me just try
We have quorum.
I can hear everybody.
I can hear everyone too.
Okay, I think we're in good shape here.
There's some interference somewhere, like somebody's not muted or something. There we go. There. Can you all hear me? Okay.
Yes.
All right, are we ready to do?
Yes, welcome. This is our August Community Board Choose Full Board meeting. It's Thursday, August 20th. Valerie, do you want to start with attendance?
Sure. Akila Asqui, William Benash, Keenberger,
Here.
Carter Booth,
Here.
Katie Bordenaro. I don't know if I need to unmute her.
Sorry, I didn't unmute myself, but I'm here.
Okay, thanks. Nita Brandt, Amy Brenna,
Here.
Here. Stay on automatically for anything. It's an election. No, I'm sorry.
Valerie, it's Katie. Can you hear me now?
hear you. Thank you, Katie.
Here.
I don't think Rich Cacapola, I think, is going to be late. Ritu Chaudhry. Coral Dawson.
I'm here.
Valerie De La Rosa. John Paul DeVerna. Doris Deether.
Hold on a second.
I see Doris.
All right.
Bob Ely.
Here.
Thank you. Mar Fitzgerald.
Here.
Thanks. Cormac Flynn.
Here.
Joe Gallagher.
Here.
David Gruber. Wayne Kowadler.
Here.
Susan Kent.
Here.
Janine Kiley.
Here.
Betty Kubovi-Weiss.
Here.
Thanks. Michael Levine.
Here.
Janet Liff.
Here.
Ed Ma.
Here.
Metzger.
Here.
Daniel Miller. Brian Pate.
Here.
Donna Ra-
I saw Dan, by the way. I don't know if you heard him, but I did see him on the screen.
Oh, yeah, I did too. It was a scene.
I don't see him. I'll look in a second when I'm done with this. Donna Raftery, did I get you?
Yep.
Lois Rakoff.
Present.
Thanks. Bo Riccobono.
Yeah, hi, I'm here.
Sandy Russo.
Here.
Rocio San.
Here.
Shirley Secunda.
Here.
Kristen
Hey,
Shea.
Valerie.
Hey, Dan.
Yeah, I just got disconnected right at the roll call, so I'm back.
No worries. I got you. Thank you. Kristen Shea. Frederica Siegel.
Here.
Georgia Silvera Siemens.
Here.
Shirley Smith. Dr.
Present.
Shirley.
Present.
Thank you. Chenault Spence.
Here.
Kathy Sullivan. Eugene Yu.
Here.
Susan Wittenberg.
Here.
Great. Anthony Wong.
Here, present.
Thanks. And Adam Zeldin.
Here.
Akila Asquith is here.
Thank you, Akila. Great.
And Scott Sartiano.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there anybody else whose name was not called? We're going to start with our public session. I think, Dan, you'd wanted me to run this, right? Okay. We have 3 public speakers. The virtual public speakers cards have to have been submitted in advance by 5 p.m. The first speaker that we have tonight is Zina Sawaged. I may be pronouncing that, for the Mayor's Office to End Domestic and Gender-Based Violence. If you could raise your hand. Oh, there you are. Zina, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So you have 2 minutes.
Oh, perfect. Okay, thank you everybody for having me. I don't think you can see me, so it's okay. I am from the office of the Mayor's Office to End Gender-Based and Domestic Violence. I am here to speak with the community to ask and inform them that we do offer we still have family justice centers that are open in each borough virtually. We are taking in calls virtually. And so we would also trying to reach out to cosmetologists or salons to better educate anybody who does encounter a victim of gender-based or domestic violence. Keep in mind,
I'm having a really hard
our services are free.
Are other people having problems here?
Zena, we're having.
And are client-centered. So we do provide.
I can't understand.
Yeah, Zena, we're having
the
trouble.
Services that they're asking we don't enforce, or we don't enforce or change their decisions in what they would like to do. So I will put my contact information.
Hey Zena, we're having a lot of trouble hearing you. If any way you could get to somewhere where you have better connection, and I'll allow you to give your testimony, because I think it's important again, but we couldn't hear the majority of what you had shared with us. Zena, can you hear me? No, okay. I'm going to move on to our next speaker, and I'll recall Zena. Our next speaker is Timothy Harrell from the Civilian Complaint Review Board.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Do you want to? Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Okay, I'm going to just have Timothy go ahead and then give you a chance to get your connection there if you're able to improve it. Timothy.
Yes. Good evening, Community Board 2. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak. I'm going to make it very, very brief. My name is Timothy.
Zena, if you could just hold on, we'll recall you when we're ready.
Yes, my name is Timothy Harrell. I'm an outreach coordinator with the New York City Civilian Complaint Review Board. As most of you may or may not know, we're a New York City agency, independent from the NYPD, and what we do is we investigate, mediate, and in some cases we prosecute allegations of misconduct against members of the NYPD. My purpose for wanting to speak to you tonight very briefly was just to inform you that we are going to be having our public board meeting on September 9th at 6 p.m. It is also a virtual meeting. It's held in a town hall fashion. Again, these meetings are held in an effort to improve police community relations by inviting members of the community as well as members of the NYPD to have a conversation and try to create a dialogue between these two in an effort to improve that relationship. I will send more notice to your community board, to all the community boards within Manhattan, and I'm asking if you could share this information with the community that you serve. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Timothy. And our next speaker is Barbara Knight.
I have my hand raised.
Okay, sure, Shirley, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, Timothy.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Shirley Smith, and I'm a member of the board. I was reading today in the Times that 50A, the law 50A, has been repealed. Did you want to share information about that on the board, or that's not part of your presentation?
It really wasn't part of my presentation, but what you read was correct. The unions had applied for a stay to at first. So what you read, what was shared as far as what I read as well, to stop the release of that information, us from sharing that information with the public, and the judge denied that. So we are at liberty to share information of disciplinary records with the public. I'm not sure if that system is set up yet. I can get that information and get it back to your board as far as how that information will be shared and what date that that the system will be updated to allow the public to view that information. As you know, we'd like to deal with a lot of transparency, and I'm sure that that information would be in our data transparency initiative. So at this time, I don't know exactly when that information will be shared, but I can always ask and find out, and I can get that information to you.
Thank you. I think it should be shared with send it to the board office.
Yes.
Not
Yes.
to me personally. Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes.
I think it's a victory. It took 44 years, but 44 years is better than none.
Yes.
Absolutely. Also had a question from another board member, and they were inquiring where is the mayor's office releasing arrest videos?
Can you say that again?
Where is the mayor's office releasing arrest videos, the body camera videos?
So through the MOU, through the Memorandum of Understanding, they are to the NYPD is to when we request body-worn camera footage, they are supposed to surrender that footage to us for review. I know that process had been slowed up with the ongoing climate. I'm gonna use that word. So we have been getting body-worn camera footage. It was a little slow. It. Let me say that I do not know about that. I know that NYPD has been submitting the video footage straight to our agency when we request it. So again, this is the first time I'm actually hearing about that. So I can also ask and find out that information and get it to your board as soon as possible.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Now we're going to move on to our third speaker, and then we're going to come back to Zena. Zena, so I'll be calling on you after the next speaker is Barbara Knight from Save the Post Office Saturday event. Give me a second. I will allow you to speak. I don't see you listed on the list. If you could raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing Barbara, so I'm gonna go back to Zena. Zena?
Yes, is this better?
Yes, much better.
Okay, thank you. My name is Zena. I am calling from the Mayor's Office to End Domestic and Gender-Based Violence. I'd like to inform the public and especially cosmetologists because we do offer free and confidential services to any survivor and their children experiencing domestic or gender-based violence at this time, despite their immigration status, despite their income, despite their gender, despite any status really. We don't have we don't have any disqualifications, unless only if you're a survivor you're eligible. And I'm reaching out to cosmetologists and salons because right now, since salons are open, we have survivors who are entering salons and they may feel more comfortable speaking out to salons and cosmetologists. And so we'd like to reach out to those cosmetologists to better educate them and inform them on how to treat a disclosure that they've received from a survivor. So if anybody is interested, I'll share my email. If anybody knows of any cosmetologists or salons that are willing to hear more about how they can better interact with the survivor when they do encounter a disclosure. And then also I will be sharing my contact information and the family justice centers where they are providing virtual services in the meantime. That is all. Thank you, everybody.
Great, thanks. Does anybody, Valerie, do you recall what the pound is for the phones to mute and unmute, or does anybody else remember what that is? I just want to make sure our other.
It's *6.
All right, so.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Lois.
Thank you. How do you prove that you're a survivor? That's to the speaker.
That's an excellent question. So you would first do an intake, and then through that they would do a series of questions to basically get your understanding of how you were treated, and then determine from there if it's a case of domestic or gender-based violence.
So where would you go?
The family. So you would contact the Family Justice Center within your borough. I will put in that. I'll put in that information for each borough in New York City. You would contact them, and then they would answer, and you could go from there.
Okay. Do you need? You can, of course, documentation that you had violence with the police, with them, or domestic violence, or police violence.
You're asking if you've encountered police violence, whether you're eligible.
Yes.
So I would have to delve in and ask more questions in terms of whether the police officer was anywhere, the relationship you had with a police officer, or this was just a random incident. And then I would go from there. For example, if the police officer was your husband or was somewhat affiliated with you, that is considered a domestic violence situation. Yeah.
Yes.
Am I answering your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. And then also to note, our family justice centers are client-centered. So that means we won't enforce or push any client to do something they do not wish to do. For example, if a client does not wish to speak with an NYPD officer, we will not allow them or us speak to them as well on their behalf.
Hello, Zena. Can you give us your hotline number for the gender violence?
Yeah, I will put it in the, do you want me to say it out loud or put it in the chat?
Put it in the chat.
You can share it in the chat. That's best.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
share that with
I'm gonna put the contact for each family justice center in each of the.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Zena.
Carter, my hand is raised.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Shirley.
I had it raised and it was lowered by.
I thought I had left it. I thought it was left from the last speaker, but go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, Zena, I think it's interesting that you're talking about the outreach to beauty shops, but remember, males are also victims of domestic violence. So why aren't you guys thinking in terms of barbershops? Is she still on the line?
Let me just check.
Maybe she didn't know that was a question or a comment.
No, Zena, you're still with us. Can you hear us? She should still be able to speak, and I don't. Okay, I think we've lost Zena there. Okay, but that's a great question, Dr. Smith. Okay, and I'm going to go back to Barbara Knight. I still don't see you in our attendee list, and it's *6 to raise your hand. Is that correct? If you are with us, if you press *6 on your phone, we might be able to see you. I don't see that we have any calling users. Okay, so that's going to conclude our public section of our meeting, and we're going to move on to the next section, which is adoption of the agenda. Everybody should have a copy of the agenda that was distributed by Bob Gormley, our district manager. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, we're
Second.
going to adopt the agenda. And now we're going to move on to reports to the public. We're hoping that this will be abbreviated. This is an August meeting, but we're certainly happy to entertain any reports. And I believe that Bob has received some reports from elected officials that he'll be distributing. If there are any elected officials who would like to provide a report, if you guys could raise your hands, and I will promote you and allow you to speak. All right, I have Luke. Start with Luke. Luke, welcome.
Hey everyone, Luke Wolf from City Comptroller Scott Stringer's office. I will keep this brief. I just want to talk a little bit about our small business plan we came out with. It's called our Save Main Street Initiative. And I do want to thank CB2 and Valerie and the Reopening Working Group. I was listening to those, and some of our ideas were definitely inspired by your conversation, so thank you for that. And our plan has 3 sections, really focused on Main Street businesses, small businesses, mom and pops throughout the city. I'll briefly go through some of the main points, but there's 25 recommendations, so definitely invite you to take a deeper look yourself. So the first section is on supporting struggling businesses, and that includes things like providing tax credits to cover reopening costs, creating a New York City tech core to help small businesses adopt digital tools so they can transition to online, which is more important right now than ever, or allowing businesses to have a cure period. So instead of getting fined for violations right away, they have a period where they can address those, especially during this moment of transition. The second section is on supporting entrepreneurs and new businesses. So providing tax incentives to entrepreneurs in high vacancy areas, which CB2 has some of, or creating a re-entrepreneurship program so that if you're an entrepreneur and you had your business for many years and are trying to retire, instead of just giving up your business, you can actually sell it to an inspiring entrepreneur. We want to create a sort of network and marketplace for that. And the third section is on building stronger neighborhoods. So one part of that would be how can we return more of our streetscape to communities like we did successfully with the restaurant program? How can we expand that to other cultural activities, retail, or really other sort of community uses? And also how can we be creative with vacant space? We think that the pandemic will unfortunately to more vacant space throughout our streetscape. So how can we use that and repurpose that for community use to make sure that on the landlord side, they're getting some revenue, and on the community side, they're getting more benefit, and that's not empty space on their streetscape. So those are just some of the ideas that we're working with, and hopefully the city will adopt, but would love for you to take more of a look, and happy to get any feedback on that as well.
Great, thanks, Luke. William, I have a question.
Thanks, Luke. Is that available online? Can you send a link to that or send it around somehow?
Yes, I will drop that in the chat now.
Thanks.
Great, Rocio.
Thank you so much for presenting to our board today, Luke. We all appreciate this. I have a question. Does Scott Stringer consider small mom and pop businesses to be benefited by this?
I think that, I don't know how directly it's addressed, but I think that some of this definitely would benefit small landlords. So something like using vacant spaces creatively. We think it's for the benefit of everyone if, for example, the city was able to take some of those spaces and instead of having them stay vacant, pay the landlord for some sort of community use for it. So I don't know if this directly addresses all of small landlords' concerns, but there's definitely some proposals in here which we think would benefit small landlords as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thanks, Luke. And we're going to move now to Ivy Rosado from Councilmember Carlina Rivera's office. 1 second here. Ivy?
Hi, my name is Ivy. I'm from Councilman Carlina Rivera's office. I just have one really quick update. Wanted to let everybody know that we're gonna get a new green market at Astor Place. So it is next Tuesday, August 25th at 11 a.m. Carlina will be there along with Village Alliance for NYC and other members to have a ribbon cutting for a new green market, which is located on East 8th Street in Lafayette. So moving forward, the market's gonna be open every Tuesday from now, August 11th up into November 24th. And the market hours are gonna be from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So we're really excited to have a new resource for fresh food and vegetables. in our district. And in addition, our office has been collecting requests from community groups that are in need of PPE. So if you know of any groups that are still looking for masks, gloves, sanitizers, please let our office know, and I will put our office email down in the chat box so you can send it over to us. That's it.
Great, thanks, Ivy. I don't see any questions from board members, so thank you. And now we have Eliana Cohen from Senator Brian Kavanaugh's office. Eliana?
It's actually Brian, myself. Eliana is also on the line, but I'm here to chat with you all personally, so I appreciate the opportunity. First of all, again, thank you all for keeping these meetings going and being so productive. It's very important that everybody has this forum. Just a few brief updates. First of all, following up on Luke's comments from Scott Stringer's office, I support a lot of actually what Scott, I think the report is terrific and you should take a closer look. We also have a piece of legislation called the Small Business Recovery Lease Act, working on this with Yulene New, the Assembly and Brad Lander and Keith Powers. But this would create a new program where the city can link property tax abatements with long-term affordable leases for businesses. It would basically authorize them to set up that program. They need state authorization to do that. So we're hoping to pass this law next time we're in Albany, which will be probably at least a few weeks from now at this point. But and you know, there was actually a Daily News editorial today that cites a lot of Scott's ideas and also this idea. But I'm happy to talk about it, give any questions. And that is expressly intended for small local businesses to give them the stability they need to reinvest in the community and stay long run, and obviously to restructure their current liabilities. A lot of people have been very concerned about how people are going to vote this November. We passed a bunch of laws. A bunch of them were signed this afternoon by the governor to facilitate voting in the fall. This is authorizing people, again, as we did last time, you will be authorized to receive an absentee ballot because of COVID. You just have to indicate that that's the reason you want it. You don't have to be ill yourself or have any of the other reasons that are normally have to be enumerated. You can also request absentee ballots starting today. Usually there's a relatively short window before the election. If you plan to vote absentee, it would be a good idea to begin requesting them now and get that process in early, get them in early, because obviously there's gonna be a lot of complicated issues with the post office and with the boards processing them. And we also made it clear that ballots that are postmarked on the day of the election, up to and including the day of election, will count. And we previously passed a bill that said if they're received the day after the election, even if they don't bear a postmark, they will also count. I'm also still pushing a bill that would extend the deadline for voter registration. We did a constitutional amendment last year that said you can register up to and including election day. But that can't go into effect because it takes several years to amend our Constitution. In the meanwhile, I passed a bill in the Senate that would reduce the deadline to the constitutional minimum, which is 10 days before Election Day. Again, that has passed the Senate. We are hoping the Assembly will take that up when we return to Albany. Briefly on housing, the eviction moratorium was extended through the end of the month. We had advocated for the courts to do that, through the end of September. No one can get evicted, no residential evictions at all. You can call our office or any of your colleagues or the city tenant helpline if anybody listening is having is being pushed toward eviction. There is some limited reopening of the courts themselves to begin processing cases. And on that note, we are having a joint hearing of the Judiciary, Housing, and Codes committees tomorrow, co-chaired by Brad Hoylman, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, and myself as Housing, and Jamal Bailey at Codes, to review all of the issues related to courts reopening, both the safety of that and also the various implications of that in terms of how criminal and civil matters are processed. And certainly I think evictions and foreclosures will be a big part of that. Since we last met, the Emergency Rent Relief Act program application has been closed. This is a limited program intended to pay the rent of low-income people. HCR, the State Housing Agency, received about 90,000 applications for that. They are processing them. And that is, again, a limited program, but an important first step that will pay people's rent from April, May, June, and July if they are low income and lost their income due to COVID. We're still pushing for a much larger approach that will require federal funding. It's a huge problem that the federal government has allowed the pandemic unemployment assistance to lapse as of July 31st. That'll exacerbate all kinds of problems, including the inability of people to pay rent. But we're still pushing for a large infusion of money for a variety of things, but in this case, particularly to help cover rent. And we have a bill that we've been working on that is intended to make sure New York State is ready to move if that money materializes to cover people's rent. And that's been pending for a while, and we've been discussing it with the executive branch and with the assembly and with all kinds of other stakeholders to get it ready to go. And it's called, we call it CRAP, the COVID Emergency Relief, COVID Emergency Rent Assistance Program. I think that I have a couple other things I could probably cover, but obviously we're all focused on what's going to happen with schools, and I think still giving and receiving input about how that's going to work as that reopens. But we're hoping to make sure that that is safe and that the schools are ready to accommodate all of the students and the families and the school personnel that have to be involved in that. I think I'll stop there. I'm happy to take questions or comments.
Thanks, Senator Kavanaugh. Looks like we have a few questions. I'm going to start with Bo Riccobono.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Carter. Hi, Brian. Bo
Hi.
Riccobono. Two questions. One, I think you went over that so quickly right at the beginning. I think you were linking property assessments to small business or stores that are vacant or something. Could you just go over that again? And I think if I heard you correctly, that's similar to what they do with the SCREE program, I believe.
It's actually an interesting analogy. Yeah, it is somewhat similar to SCREE. It basically would say that this is a program that we would authorize it at the state level with some basic parameters. The city would have the ability to refine it and put additional parameters. But basically, if you're a property owner and you are willing to negotiate an affordable lease over the long term with 10 years of affordability, including restructuring any current outstanding arrears on that property with that tenant, you would get the benefit of a tax break, a tax abatement that would extend for whatever period the city chooses to extend it. They could do it all 10 years, or they could front load it because some landlords are having real trouble paying taxes now. And again, the lease would have to, that's in a nutshell, that's it. The city could put a maximum, how much they're willing and able to spend on this program. If they chose to, they could say, we're going to forego, $100 million or $500 million or $1 billion in taxes in this manner. And they could set other parameters on it. But the goal now is to get the thing authorized. We're not likely to be in session throughout the fall. So the goal is to get it authorized through this piece of legislation that's introduced and ready to go. And again, we've worked closely with Brad Lander and Keith Powers on this at the council level. And we're getting, we've been speaking with the city and with the speaker's office as well, the city council speaker's office as well, to try to get the program up and running.
Yeah, well, obviously the devil is in the details as usual, but it sounds like a good idea. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was your opinion, as a state official, of the city council's hiatus on the enforcement of personal guarantees and good guy guarantees, which to me seems on the face of it to be blatantly unconstitutional, to retroactively amend a contract. Also, I don't think the city personally has the right to do that without state legislation. I'm just wondering your opinion on this. Obviously, you probably don't want to opine on its constitutionality, but isn't it true that the state should back up the city in this legislation? Wouldn't that be required?
Yeah, I'm happy to sort of look into it and see if our lawyers have an educated opinion about it, but I wouldn't opine on either the legality or the constitutionality of it. I think that there are many areas where the city cannot act independently, and there are many where they can. And obviously, we don't have the right to simply abridge or void contracts at any level of government in the U.S. Without some constitutional questions being answered. But I don't have an opinion about whether it's something they have the authority to do. Obviously, their lawyers decided that they do indeed have that authority, but I haven't looked at the legal question.
Yeah. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator. Rocio?
Thank you so much for taking my questions. I have two questions. One is backing up what Bo Riccobono mentioned regarding the commercial leases, the abatement of taxes. The devil is in the details. And I am very hesitant to go along with any kind of program. I, as a small property owner, mom and pop real estate owner, I'm afraid technically to go with any government program such as this, because the city has been known, the state has been known to change the rules of the game as it starts with certain rules. And when the end is coming, all of a sudden they change the rules. And I'll give you an example. For instance, the rent stabilization has to do the counting, the vacancy rates. And it's supposed to be done this year with the census. But all of a sudden, they decided they're going to change it because it's not convenient to know how many vacant apartments. And there are many, 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 many vacant apartments. And they don't want anyone to know how many are there, because then the rent regulations would not be in effect anymore, because rent regulations exist because of the emergency of too few apartments for people to rent. If the vacancy goes above 5%, then rent regulations go out the window. And of course they don't want that because there are too many rent regulated. It's a political game. So I don't trust what the city does, because right now they say, you know, you can give them a benefit for, you can get a tax abatement for 10 years. We don't know what's going to happen in 10 years.
I don't mean to
wait. And the other question is, if you, Howard,
I haven't heard a question yet, but this isn't time for people.
Wait. I have a question, please.
Right. Okay.
My other question is regarding lien sales. I know they're beginning. A lot of landlords are going to lose their buildings because people are not paying the rent. And how are you going to stop the liens? How are you going to small property owners from losing their buildings because tenants are not paying the rent? How are we going to be made whole or made safe and not lose our buildings to big developers that come and will take all our buildings away? What's going to happen with the lien sales? That's the question.
Okay, and I'll try to address the points quickly. First of all, we are going to structure this so that it is state authorized. It would require a change in state law for the city to alter the terms of the program, and it does expire in it expires after the period during which the affordability is required. So it's not an unlimited authority of the city, but obviously you'll have to decide whether the terms are sufficient. It would also be entirely voluntary by both landlords and tenants to participate. Just a point of information, the proposal to change the timing of the housing vacancy survey, I understand why you might be thinking that that was for a particular purpose at this moment in our history. It was proposed last year, and the reason for that is that the staff, that report has been done for many years now by the Census Bureau. Basically, it's been done under contract with the Census Bureau. So about every 20 years or so, it's due during the year when the census is being done, and they don't have the capacity to do it. So I actually passed a bill last year that would have extended that period long before the heightened levels of vacancy were an issue this year. It's really, there's not a sort of dark conspiracy there, although I do agree with you that it'd be interesting to see the data this year. But we've been working on it for a long time, and it's purely logistical, I promise you. On the lien sales, there is concern. I think we want to distinguish, there's a piece of legislation pending that would basically put a moratorium on lien sales. It's sponsored by Senator Leroy Comrie. We want to make sure that there are some cases where lien sales really are a mechanism to get the building out of a kind of insecure status where a landlord really has been neglecting the building and not paying the taxes. So sometimes they play a productive purpose of transferring ownership to a responsible party. We want to, I think there's a goal of making sure we permit that to continue. But I think a lot of us, including myself, have sympathy with landlords who haven't been able to pay because they're not receiving the rent and they're having trouble with their taxes. We granted a blanket authority for the city to restructure taxes in that circumstance, to lower them or delay them. But I also think it's fair to say that if we're not evicting people, we probably also shouldn't be having people's buildings taken away from them during this very difficult time if they're otherwise being responsible. So I will be working on that. And again, it's Senator Comrie has a bill. You might want to take a look.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
William Benish.
Thanks, Senator, for speaking. My question is just in regards to the definition of a recovery lease. How exactly is that going to be defined? And is there going to be some agency that's going to have to certify it? So is it going to be like if you do a discount of X% on the existing lease, do you have to get beyond a threshold? Is there the possibility to do percentage leases as perhaps a component of a newly restructured lease? Have you just thought about kind of exactly how that's going to be defined?
We've done a lot of thinking, but haven't come to conclusions on that. So what we said is this: we laid out the basic parameters that the city can work with, and they can't go beyond. But we've had conversations with economists, with chambers of commerce. There was a release on this that lists some of the people we've been working with as well. But we're open to input. And again, the primary place where the details of this will be worked out is at the city level. We're not mandating they do this in a particular way. But yeah, they will have to define what makes it affordable, and they'll have to define how you calculate how big a tax break you get and for what period. The minimum parameters are the affordability must extend for 10 years or more. And the tax abatement can go no more than 10 years. And there is some assumption that they might front load the tax abatement because people have a real need for, people are having trouble paying taxes right now. And as an inducement to get people involved in the program to overcome the skepticism of Ms. Sands and others. But it's going to be a voluntary program, and we're going to design it. The goal is to design it in such a way that business people who are trying to do the right thing will have some incentives to do that and work with their tenants, both on the property owner side and the tenant side.
Great, thanks. I've got 2 more questions, or it looks like 3. I have Keen Berger, Sandy Russo, and Chenault Spence. So Keen?
Right. Hi, Brian. Thanks a lot for coming. And on schools, I'm glad you mentioned it, but you should look at the resolution that I believe the community board is going to pass tonight, that the schools committee got together. We don't want the schools to be open, I certainly don't, until they're really safe. And a lot of our schools, the ventilation system is a mess. So both the teachers and the children need safe schools, and just please, do what you can to make sure that we don't open precipitously.
Yeah, we are. I appreciate that, and we are focusing on it, and it's going to be challenging. I think Gail Brewer is on. I think she may have some opinions about this as well. The city's plan does need to be approved by the governor's office, and I think a lot of people are going to be scrutinizing very closely. I know a lot of the private schools have made the decision that they're not opening at the beginning of the year. They're going to delay and see how it looks in late September or October. And so, again, we're looking at it closely. We're hearing from all sides. It is optional from the perspective of families, but obviously, it's going to be where I am very, I wanted to keep it short because there's a lot of speakers, but I mentioned it because I recognize it's a very thorny issue with a lot of very strong opinions and a lot at stake. So we really do want to get it right, and we are paying attention. So I appreciate
Right.
And we'll take a look at
It's not up to the individual parents to try to figure out for their individual kids.
Right, I get it.
That is pushing it way down. This should be a system-wide decision.
I would say we need to get the system-wide decision right, but even whatever we decide system-wide, we probably want some discretion for people to say, I'm not comfortable, and I'm doing what I need to do with my kids too. But yes, we want, like, the element of personal choice does not obviate the need for a system-wide solution that is right to getting those questions right, because there's public health issues that go beyond the people who are actually in the buildings anyway.
Absolutely.
I'm with you on that.
Thanks, Brian.
Great. And Sandy?
I filled out a request for an absentee ballot today, and you do it online. But for New York State, you could not choose that you're requesting this ballot because of COVID considerations.
What time did you do that?
Mid-morning.
Okay, the governor this afternoon signed the bill effective immediately. That should allow, I don't know if, I suspect the Board of Elections at 7:18 p.m. has not updated it. They are supposed to promptly update it. So that was the rule in the primary. That was a special rule for the primary. It was only signed into law literally 3 or 4 hours ago. So
Okay.
as by tomorrow morning, if they're doing their job, you should be able to check that.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Great, thanks. And Chenault?
And a question in relationship to a prior question, but less drastic or less traumatic than something like a lien sale or being brought to bear for not having paid the tax or whatever it is. A situation where one has in good faith negotiated new rents, they're simply not sufficient to cover expenses in the way that they were before. Is there something that can sort of short circuit a problem?
Yeah, so we were trying to be respectful in Albany of home rule on taxes. So we passed a bill, and I was instrumental in making sure this happened. We passed a bill that allows every taxing jurisdiction in New York broad discretion to reduce taxes, to delay taxes, to waive penalties, to do all those things at their discretion in response to COVID. We did not mandate that the city do that because a lot of the revenue that they get from the property tax system is the revenue that is necessary for them to provide the basic services. And we would have been very upset if the federal government unilaterally altered our tax structure. So we decided not to do that. But the city has a lot of discretion to do that. The bill that I was talking about before is exactly designed to facilitate that kind of situation. You're trying to do the right thing. You recognize the tenants don't have money. You're willing to do affordability. You would have to have some longer term affordability element to participate in that particular program. But we're hoping that the city will be willing to put real resources behind that and make the benefits generous enough to incentivize property owners to take the deal. I will just note that high unaffordability of storefronts to small businesses that we really care deeply about in our communities is not a new issue in COVID. It's been exacerbated very severely by COVID, but this is a long-term question. And we are hoping that this is a mechanism. And somebody said, SCREE, which is the senior citizen rent increase exemption for residential tenants, was a new idea at some point. Now it's become a staple of keeping people in their homes over the long term. We're hoping that this kind of thing will catch on and become a normal approach, because there's a lot of public interest in making sure businesses continue to thrive in our communities.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks. And one last question before we move on from Janine Kylie.
Hi, Senator Kavanaugh. I just want to push another educational point, which is also in a resolution tonight.
We can't hear you.
No matter what happens with schools reopening, whether it's anywhere from 3 to 5 days a week, and I'm not working. I'm going to turn off my. Does it sound better if I turn off my video?
Yes. Much better.
Okay, great. So whatever happens with schools reopening, students will be learning remotely anywhere from 3 to 5 days a week. And I feel that 99% of the education conversation is about open and don't reopen, and that's important. That's a safety conversation. But what I don't want to go away is the critical need to have high quality remote learning. This means synchronous instruction, small group instruction, connections daily with teachers, not self-guided, downloaded, boring worksheets. This really needs to be robust, and there cannot be minimums. There need to be minimums at least that each teacher provides. And I know that as a state official, you don't have a ton of power over this, but this is a matter of money, and this is a matter of pushing back on all the different entities that want to limit the quality of the remote learning.
Right. It's a good point, and it's important. And I would add, there are specific issues for students with special needs that have been very difficult to address remotely, and there are a lot of we have been paying attention to those issues as well. I will note it is very much the state's role to make sure the schools are properly funded, along obviously the city has responsibility for that. I will just note that The federal government, again, is discussing what to do now. And the governor's office is estimating a potential 20% reduction in funding for big school districts in the state if we don't get federal relief. So, which is going to make it very, very, very difficult. We're pushing back on that, and the legislature will certainly push on back, but it'll make it very, very difficult to do any of this properly if the schools are all also seeing funding reductions at a time when they actually need more funding to accommodate the multiple ways people are learning. So it is a big fight. To the extent you're talking anybody involved in the federal government, I'm not sending you to lobby your congressman next necessarily is very good on this, but like really it really is important that we make sure the funding is available. And unlike the federal government, the state cannot run the kind of massive deficit spending that you can do in a crisis like this that the feds can. So we are looking at revenue enhancements and taxes and all that, but we do need the feds to really step up to make sure that education is made whole along with so many other things.
All right, I had already called last questions, but I see three more board members have their hands up. If you have a one sentence question, and Senator Kavanaugh.
I'll try to be quick. Yeah.
Yeah, I know a number of people would like to watch some of the speeches tonight. Georgia?
It wasn't a question actually, but maybe I'll make it into a question. It's just supporting what Janine just said and really pushing why can't our elected officials demand that all teachers in all classrooms in all grades in a school follow a standard in terms of live small group teaching. My kids last year, one in kindergarten.
Can you just keep a brief question because we really need to.
Well, that was my question.
Okay.
I got it. I will say, we need to hear, like the logistics of doing this are very complicated. We do need to hear from all. We want to make sure the quality is high. We want to make sure concerns like yours are addressed. I think that there is a little bit more, a little bit more effort that needs to be made and figure out what's feasible, what's possible. Are we really doing in person? What does it look like? So we're paying attention. I'm not yet ready to make specific demands. I will look at your resolution tonight, and that will certainly influence the way we think about this. I note that Janine has posted about a rally about the cuts, the school cuts as well, which is tomorrow at 4 p.m. I will be chairing the aforementioned hearing on the courts at that point. But I mean, there's a lot of activity on this, and I will say we're going to have hard time doing anything that people want if we don't have the funding.
Great, thanks. Dr. Smith?
Quickly, in light of what Janine said, it's not a question, but a comment. We all know that with marginalized and disenfranchised kids in neighborhoods where they are poor, brown, or color, even the kids who were in classes with in-person teachers did not get a fair shake. And definitely the ones now who are doing the remote, that's very questionable. And if anyone's interested, there's a very interesting research report that just came out by Ed Trust that talked about how deficient and the remote learning has really, really affected kids of color and poor kids. So, and the Board of Ed, I don't think have a standard at all. So it's a very, very, very bad kind of situation, and one that even there's no data or very limited data on how effective not only the in-class teaching for Black and brown and poor kids, but definitely they've gotten a very poor shake with this remote learning.
And I will, respecting Carter's desire for this to be a speed round, I will say we will check out the report, and I share all of those concerns.
All right, and then our last is Coral. Coral, you had a comment?
Yeah, I will be sending both my children in 5 days a week to school in 2 weeks, and I'm very grateful for that. Those are private schools, but that only widens the divide if you don't have in-person options for those families that want to be able to send their children in. So I strongly hope that you will consider that. And I would ask you to look at programs that have figured out a way to have live Zoom instruction all day long with the kids having to even raise their hands to go to the bathroom, act just as if they're in the classroom if they're not able to go to school or their family doesn't feel comfortable. So they're still in the classroom. They're not able to just hide behind or just turn in or check boxes. They're just as present as they would be in the classroom. And those do exist. I hope you will look into them, and I'm happy to connect you.
Good, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Senator Kavanaugh. We very much appreciate your joining us tonight.
Happy to be here. Sorry to take up so much of your time, but I appreciated the dialogue. Thank you.
All right, thanks. And now we're going to jump ahead here to Borough President Brewer. Gail?
Thank you very much. I'll be quick. I'll get to the schools in a minute because I actually agree with a lot of what you said, and I'm up to here with the schools. So just in terms of open streets, we went to Chinatown today, and we're going to be going to all 12 community boards, giving out the masks and the sanitizer and face shields. But more importantly, just so you know, 6 o'clock tomorrow night, because we'll be 110th Lexington in the morning, but Friday, August 21 at 6 o'clock, Rosa Mendez has put together quite a schedule. So we'll be on 8th Street and Broadway, walking south on Broadway to Houston, just talking to people and giving out. If anybody wants to join us, you're welcome. But we are doing all the way from the bottom of Manhattan to the top for the next week. Number two, I know that we are all talking about getting funding, and I think you know that the Manhattan Community Award Program, which is our expense money, the funding applications are due tomorrow at 5 o'clock. We just put out our Thursday newsletter, and I saw there was money available through an arts program, and there's another, I think new, but I could be wrong, but it's like $15,000 to $20,000 for small businesses who are making the cut. So just be sure you notice, as I will do everything I can to try to help those two, both the arts and small business. I know you're sick of the census, we all are. But just so you know, the Empire State Development, which is, of course is the state EDC, they gave a long time ago, they said they were going to give funding to the 5 borough presidents because they're giving them to the counties around the state. Well, we got them about a week ago when we were a hell of a materials to fill out, but we were the first borough president to get it in. I think it was about, I don't know, 40 groups or 50 groups that came. They were vetted by the state. We picked some of them, and we gave out the funding. So yes, people are knocking on doors from the U.S. Census, but we're also trying to supplement that. So that's number one. You know, they were given to groups that hopefully will be applicable to the communities from which they come. Number two, we contacted the Board of Elections with Julie Memming, and we got the list of 5. It's an accessible list, it's a transparent list, it's an available list of the people who have left the city and gave a forwarding address. And we are writing to them and say, please, if you have filled out the census where you are, redo it and put down your permanent New York address. It's a huge list, but those are going out immediately. Number 3, we did our own postcard. We did 140,000 postcards about a month ago, and we're doing another 140,000 now to the lowest responding census tracts. You know, I think Manhattan is inching up more than other boroughs, but it's still not great. So just so you know, we're trying every aspect that we can. I want to just talk about the schools because there's a little nuance which will make you even more upset, keen than everybody else. So we give out funding, a lot of money to the schools every year, technology, gyms, and so on. So last year, which is FY20, they haven't spent the money yet. So it's sitting there. And when I was on a Zoom earlier, I found out that Senator Brian Benjamin in Harlem, he also gave schools in Harlem a lot of money and nothing has moved. And all could be for remote learning, picking up on what Janine was talking about. So we're now in conversations with the executive superintendent every single day in the borough of Manhattan. We now have a list of all the schools who needs, apparently, according to them, the kinds of devices that are not happening or what the school needs to make, and I agree with you 100%, what the learning at home better. I know schools, middle school, in a good neighborhood in terms of the quality of the students. The students come from all over, but they have an excellent principal, AP, and so on. 36% in last semester never opened the devices. So it's pretty, no matter what neighborhood you're in, good, challenge, in between, high income, low income, big problems. So we have to improve. And the second thing is, I totally agree, teachers need to have live teaching with the students. I can't tell you how many people complain that they were on for half an hour, if that, and then in the suburban schools, 4 or 5 hours, teacher and student. Big problem. If I had my way, I would enhance the regional enrichment centers. They're called RECs. They work incredibly well. I have a lot of friends who are either EMTs, doctors, nurses, and they sent their kids to the REC. The REC was phenomenal. So if I had my way, I would do RECs because there are so many parents working, for every parent who is going to work. And then I would do virtual, and then I would do arts and social emotional where necessary, perhaps at the school. That's what I would do. And I'm not in charge. In the interim, we sure need to find a way to get the FY20 money spent, and we want to redirect it to something that's appropriate for online learning. Fine, but we got to spend the money. I know we talked earlier about sanitation. Your chair mentioned it this morning. Everybody did at the Borough Board. Just so you know, 65% cut to the weekday service, and unless a council member anteed up 100% to the litter basket pickup cut on the weekend. That's a problem, in my opinion. And then just finally, I just want to say, we're working on two things just in terms of future. One is affordable housing. We've been meeting with all of from the Furman Center to the nonprofits to the for-profit developers who build affordable housing. At least come up with something that has to get done. Because at this point, I feel like we're just casting in the wind. Here's a building, here's a building. And I don't feel like we have a plan. We don't have any kind of a policy. So we're doing that, something that hopefully will be a blueprint. And then I know that a while ago, we wrote a letter, we've not gotten an answer yet, on the issue of open meetings. I heard this morning at the Borough Board, and I'm sure you know this, that some of the boards have purchased what I would consider sophisticated equipment to be able to, into the future, have these kinds of conversations, even maybe more so than the Zoom. Long story short, we're going to have some virtual and some in person in terms of the community boards or other organizations. We have to change the open meeting law, and I think Carter knows better than I about why. But just let you know, we haven't got an answer on that, but I have heard constantly from people who actually like to be able to participate in a different way. We're still continuing to give food out to the seniors from the top of Manhattan to the bottom of Manhattan with Fresh Direct and NYCHA. And I do think for seniors in general, we have to think about the food for the future. The senior centers are not open. I haven't heard when they are going to open. And it's a real challenge for that community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gail. I've got a couple of questions. First from Georgia.
Yes, good evening, Madam President. When you were here last month, you said you were going to be speaking with principals in the borough to sort of assess where they are in terms of outdoor learning. And so I'm curious if you had that conversation and what you heard. And the reason I'm asking, well, there are many reasons, but one of which is the school in my neighborhood. They're really focusing on open streets to use for drop off and pickup, and are sort of hesitant to use open streets for outdoor learning and play because of this DOE position that students need to be in the classroom for the 5 hours of instruction if they're in school. Thank you.
Okay, well, very quickly, a couple of issues. Again, we were on today with and Carter was the executive superintendent, and I'd heard this previously. The agencies don't coordinate well, as you know. So in terms of the open streets, even before you get to outdoor learning, a lot of schools want to close those streets, but DOE has said, oh, we won't tell you till October 21. Well, that's not helpful. And so even, I don't know, I must have 20 schools who are saying, please, please help us get our streets open. So I'm just saying that's one issue right there to try to deal with much sooner than October 21. The second issue is we are having trouble with DOE, to be honest with you. The Brooklyn council members are trying also. to get them to agree if a school wants to, not everybody has the place or the interest, to be able to get tents. So I can't say we've been trying. I can't say I have been extremely successful. We're going to keep trying. But if your school needs help on something, let me know and I can try to do case by case.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Dr. Smith?
Good evening, Gail. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm well, thank you.
Yes. I'd like to talk, if you want, later offline with you about this funding that Brian gave to Harlem, to the school districts. Is there some way that you and I can talk, or you can put me in touch?
I'll put
Get
my
more
info.
information.
Yeah.
Huh?
It's the same funding, it's just state that we give. We give money for, like I said, capital money for technology, gyms, bathrooms, the roof, everything. And that's the money that's stuck. It's not like expense money for program. It's money for, I would call it bricks and mortar, but technology comes under that. But I'll put my information in the chat.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bo?
Hi, Gail. Bo Riccobono. Hi. I'm just wondering if you felt it would be more productive and efficient all around if the Department of Ed just stopped the fiction that they will open schools and admit that they won't, because you and I think, know that they won't, and spend some time trying to improve the quality of the remote education, because it wasn't good in this last few months, and we really need to improve it. Everybody agrees with that. And I think all this time spent on this nonsense, they're not going to open the schools. We know that. So let's change our focus.
You feel a little upset because when people tell you who are administrators at the Department of Education offline, that they wish that DOE had spent months and months working on the virtual, which is what you just said, and did that during this time period, then you know what you just said is correct. But they didn't. And so we're in as somebody, I think Denise said earlier, we're in a really horrible academic, that's what I'm concerned about. I can talk about the learning centers or learning labs. Those are the quote unquote daycare. So I go visiting, you know me. Oh, this looks interesting. I stop in. And it turns out a program has been selected, a nonprofit, as a learning lab, which is the off-day location for students. If you can't be home, this gives, according to the mayor, 100,000 people a place to go. So I'm thinking, what is a learning lab? What is childcare? So I go, and it's a fabulous nonprofit. They're used to doing after school and weekends, but they have been selected. But they don't know which students are coming. They don't know what grades are coming. And if it's like, I'm making this up, they work in 2 schools. So if the students from those schools came, they could work on the academics because they know the teachers. But if 10 schools come, there's no way you'll know the teachers, and so the kids will not be able to get caught up on academics. I'll leave it at that, but because I get too upset.
Yeah, I get it. Thank you very much.
Okay, and then one last question from Scott Sartiano.
Hi, for President Brewer. Thanks for your time. Yeah, I just want to know, when are we going to be able to open restaurants? You know, today I could go to Home Depot and buy enough stuff to build a kitchen. My wife can go to Zara and buy a mess. Kids are going to go to school. What more needs to be done so that people can eat in restaurants? You know, we literally and figuratively feed people in New York City, and we are all going out of business. What's happening?
I'm on the Governor's Recovery Task Force. It comes up at every meeting. I will try to find out, Scott. I can't say that I know. I feel this is just a feeling because we got through the gyms and the rate, as you know, is extremely low. It feels like it's going to happen soon, but I don't know. It's really, really hard on restaurants. I'm aware of that. But yeah. I don't have an answer for you. I know it's hard.
Yeah, and it's also just contradictory. You can go across a body of water and eat inside of a restaurant. Right. You can ride the subway in New York. It just, you know, we're at a loss.
I can't give you an answer. It is the governor, but I will bring it up again tomorrow. I have brought it up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Borough President Brewer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
And I think that's all the questions that I see from board members. Thanks for joining us tonight. Definitely appreciate it. I have one more public official report, and that's Shivani Gonzalez. Shivani?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, so I'll keep it very, very quick. So the biggest thing I want to say is that the Assembly member has partnered with Health and Hospitals for a mobile COVID testing. So it was this week from Monday to Friday. So tomorrow's the last day. No appointment, no insurance necessary, and you can just show up. Also, you get your results within 48 hours, which, as we are learning, is very, very quick. So if you are interested and want to go get your free COVID test, it is at the intersection of Cherry Street and Market Slip in the Lower East Side from 10 to 4. Tomorrow will be the last day, but we also would love to plan more things like this, and I'll definitely keep you posted if those things come up. That's basically the biggest update. Additionally, we're still doing PPE distribution, food distribution, so if you know of anyone or any group who needs help with that, please feel free to contact our office. And that's basically it for this month for me.
Great, thank you very much. And we've had a few other elected officials reps on the line, but I think that they've all submitted reports in lieu of speaking. I see one question from Coral. Coral, if you had a question.
Yeah, I do. I have a question about those free tests. How quickly are the results coming back? Because I've been shocked at everyone going in the last 10 days saying they still haven't gotten their results.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a massive problem. I myself got tested at a city MD, I think, and results took, I think, 18 days, which at that point, they're just not helpful anymore. But the reason that we really were happy to partner with Health and Hospitals for this is that they are guaranteeing results within 48 hours. And of our staff who's gone and people we know who've gone, that has remained true. They've gotten their test results within 48 hours of the test being done.
But that includes the Go Health centers, right? That's Health and Hospitals?
So this is actually just like a separate mobile testing event. So I'm not sure about just Health and Hospitals in general, but I know with this mobile testing unit that we are sponsoring and partnering with specifically, the results are 48 hours. I can't really speak to the rest of them though. I'm not totally sure.
Yeah, I would just really urge improvement on that. I think everyone knows it, but having all these public announcements encouraging people to get tested and it's free and you get results and everyone goes and they get worthless tests 3 weeks later, it's just completely a public disservice. I don't even know what the data means at this point. So yeah. It's upsetting. We've had a lot of people that are, work in different things, reach out, and I've tried to help people and they just don't get results. Or someone pays $800 to get them because they're not insured and they still don't get the results.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
All these public campaigns need to stop saying it's free, easy, and effective. It's not working.
Sure, I absolutely agree. And it's very it's problematic and it's upsetting to not get your results and not be able to have that valuable information when you do and it's too late. And I definitely agree. And so that's why we were really happy to work with this mobile testing unit specifically to be able to have those very quick results. And hopefully that'll become the trend within New York very, very soon in general. And hopefully that our office will be able to host more testing sites like this where they are able to have that really quick turnaround. But yeah, so tomorrow's, if you want those fast results, if you want to refer anyone, the last day is tomorrow from 10 to 4 at Cherry Street and Market Slip.
I will.
And it's been like really great and easy and quick. So yeah.
Thanks, Carl. One other or two more questions. Georgia, you had a question?
Yes, I do have a question. I'm curious if then the office will partner with schools. The DOE is saying, or I guess the UFT is saying that teachers and students must be tested before they enter school buildings. And if it's taking 2 weeks for a result, then you're potentially sending asymptomatic people into an indoor space. So I'm curious if there's been any conversation because of the 48-hour turnaround period with partnering with DOE, New York City Schools. Thanks.
Yeah, that's an amazing question. I definitely will bring that back to our office and see if there's anything that we can do and if that's at all possible, because that's a really great idea and super important in terms of making sure that people are properly tested before they get in. So I will definitely bring that back to our office. Thank you so much for that suggestion.
Great, thanks. And one last question from Matt Metzger.
I'm okay, Carter. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Matt. I don't see any other questions. Shivani, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, and I think that's all the elected officials that we had. 1 second here. That we had that we're going to provide the reports. We're going to move on to the chair's report. As we distributed to everybody, really sad that one of our board members, Tom Connor, had passed away this month. It was very sad news. You know, Tom was an incredibly strong advocate for senior issues and always spoke from his heart. You know, as board members, we've all had an opportunity to hear him speak very eloquently on a lot of different issues that he felt very strongly about. I wanted to have a moment of silence just to acknowledge him for a few seconds. And Tom was also a member of VID, and I know that they had a gathering for him yesterday, and I've been in touch with Tom's niece, who indicated that they're putting together a memorial service with Greenwich House, and that virtual memorial is going to be taking place on September 23rd. And we have more information. Bob will share that with everyone on the board. As far as, I'm going to keep the rest of the report very brief. One of the things, as you heard, the DSNY, the trash bin pickup has been curtailed quite a bit. One of the ways that we can really make some sort of an impact on there is encouraging people not to put household trash in the corner bins. I mean, I know this sounds fairly simplistic, but it really keeps the bins from overflowing, and that's something that definitely a big issue. And while seemingly simple, it's something, if you see any of your neighbors, if you could encourage them not to do that. Issues of homelessness have obviously been on the rise. I believe that Susanna Ahrens is going to be addressing that with our social services meeting next month. And we also had a committee meeting for the reopening working group, the Restarting Together Universities, that went very well. NYU and the New School walked us through their plans for welcoming students back to campus, and that was of note for our local businesses and our community. And next month, they're going to be inviting museums and cultural institutions to join us and share with us how their reopenings are going and put the status on that. For the most part, open restaurants is going very well. I think most of you have seen that in our community. There are a couple of new streets that are going to be participating this weekend. We have Spring Street in Little Italy, or Nolita. I know a lot of you still refer to that as Little Italy, and the same portion of Elizabeth Street between Spring and Houston. We do still have a few issues that are actually in that area that we've heard of, as far as the sanitation trucks and fire trucks being able to navigate when there are when they're seating on the roadbed on both sides of the street. I think I'm going to keep it at that. One last note: one of our biggest fans who joins us on most of our meetings from the public side, Pete Davies. It's his birthday today, so I just wanted to wish him a happy birthday. With that, I'm going to move on to District Manager's report. Bob.
All right, first, I just want to say that I'll be out of town the next couple of days, so Josh will send out the information regarding the virtual memorial for Tom. I just sent all the board members an email which contains more information about my report. I wanted to keep mine very brief because I know we all want to get home today. The first item just had to do with permits from the Parks Department, or rather the Parks Department is not issuing permits for their fields or their courts. And again, if you want more information, it's in the email. Secondly, I was just going to talk a little bit about the Hudson Park Library. It's one of the 30 libraries in Manhattan that's open for grab and go. I sent a link to the library's information. And the email also included a report from Assemblymember Yulene knew. And that's it, except for happy birthday, Pete. Thank you.
I see one hand up. Coral, did you have a question?
More, I thought that, this decline in sanitation services is doing a disservice to the restaurants that are having to operate outside, because you have lots of pileups, at least in Soho, right next to the tables and chairs that are set up, and the restaurants can't move it because it's residential trash too. So
The service cutbacks at this point are not in the residential pickups. They're in the corner bins, the trash bins. It's the one pickup a day.
I've just noticed it a lot this past week. There's a lot more trash in Soho, a lot more.
I don't think that the residential pickups have changed. So maybe it's people who are returning back to the city. So
it's hard for the restaurants are grumbling about it because they have like all the stinky trash right next to the tables. So it's just something to note.
Yeah, Bob, maybe you can follow up with our local garage, and that's an interesting question. With that, we are going to move on to our business session. We're going to begin that with the approval of the July minutes. Bob had distributed the July minutes to the board. Has everybody had a chance to review those minutes? Is there any objection to approving those minutes? Or a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. We are going to move on to standing committee reports, but and looking back at our past meetings, we generally take a roll call vote on the first item, but we haven't been doing that. But I'm going to go ahead and have Valerie just take a quick roll call attendance, because I noticed that we had a number of board members that joined us who are not here. Valerie?
Sure. Let's see. Akila Azqui. Here. William Benesh.
Here.
Keen Berger. Here. Carter Booth.
Here.
Katie Bordenaro. I'll take her just a second. I see her on there. Anita Brandt.
Here.
Amy Brenna.
Here.
Rich Cacapolo.
Here.
Ritu Chaudhry. Coral Dawson.
Here.
John Paul DeVerna.
Here.
Great. And I believe Doris Diether is here. Bob Ely.
Here.
Mark Fitzgerald.
Here.
Cormac Flynn.
Here.
Joseph Gallagher.
Here.
David Cooper.
Here.
Wayne Kwadler.
Here.
Susan Kent.
Here.
Janine Kiley.
Here.
Betty Kabobi Weiss.
Here.
Patricia Laria. Oh, she's not here today. Michael Levine.
Here.
Janet Lipp.
Here.
Ma.
Yes, here.
Matt Metzger.
Here, and Katie wrote in the chat that she's here too, by the way.
Yeah, I got her. Daniel Miller.
Here.
Brian Pape.
Present.
Donna Raftery.
Here.
Lois Rakoff.
Still here.
Great. Bo Riccobono. Sandy Russo. Rocio Sands.
Here.
Scott Sartiano.
Here.
Shirley Secunda. Kristen Shea.
Shirley's here.
Kristen Shea.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Hi, Kristen, thanks.
Hey.
Frederica Siegel.
Here.
Georgia Silvera Siemens.
Here.
Dr. Shirley Smith.
Present.
Chenault Spence.
Here.
Kathy Sullivan,
Here.
Eugene Yu,
Here.
Ethan Wittenberg,
Here.
Anthony Wong,
Here.
Adam Zeldin.
Here.
Great, thank you.
Great, thanks everybody. We're going to move on to our first committee report of SLA licensing. Donna or Bob, which one of you is going to be presenting?
I'm going to do it.
Okay.
So we had 5 applications this month. All the decisions were unanimous. There were 2 Le Pen Quitodens, I think is how you say that, restaurant wine. They were essentially transfers, the same method of operation as before. That was deny unless. Blossom Restaurant, which is moving.
You want to go through them item by item?
I don't have to.
Well, we have to just put them onto the record.
Okay. So the Le Pen du Quitoden, one was on Grand Street. That was
I mean,
basically.
I just want to just go through in the order that we have them on the report. The number 1 is Blossom Union Square.
Okay, Blossom Union Square, that was a new restaurant wine, that was deny unless. And then Le Pen Quitten on 100 Grand Street, restaurant wine, essentially a transfer, that was a deny unless. Another one on 10 Fifth Avenue, restaurant wine, essentially a transfer, that was a deny unless. And Cafe Reggio on McDougal Street, that was an upgrade from an OP, no change in method of operation. That was a deny unless. And then 401 West Grand was for a new OP and a private members club, and that was a deny. And that's it. The rest were.
And then we had items 6 through 12 were layovers, no shows.
Yep. You want me to, do I read all of those?
No, that's okay. Does anybody want to discuss any of the items, number 1 through 12, or call any out for discussion? Okay, I see Shirley, you had your hand up. Oh. Still muted.
Okay, here I am. I just have a question. The question is on number 2 and number 3, Le Pen Quotidien. I thought they were closing. So what's happened? Are they still open? New ownership or what?
It's new ownership. A new group bought them out and they're reopening.
Oh, okay, thanks, Donna.
Yeah. There was a group that bought it, a portion of them, not all of them. So a number of them are closing, and we have another one that's coming back. I can't remember which one, but a number of them in our community board are closing. So that's a fair question. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. So is there any other discussion on items 1 through 12? Okay. So like in past months, I'm going to move all 12 of these items and these resolutions into an omnibus bill that we can vote on at the end of the business session. Is there any objection to that? And if anybody would like, we can call out any item for an individual vote if that's what you'd like to do. So is there any objection? Okay, I don't see any objection. Okay, we're going to move on to the next landmarks and public aesthetics. Canal Spence.
I'll summarize things in the interest of time. 462 Broadway is an exceptional building that has been beautifully restored to what I describe as mint condition. And the proposal is on a corner to put in a bank, in particular, 2 ATM machines that would invade the infill in 2 spots. And we recommended flat out denial as nothing being suited to the building itself or attempt to integrate into it. 121 West 11th, to replace windows, rooftop addition, and a rear addition. All in all, we approved the application with the exception of a generator on top of a rooftop addition that is just egregiously visible from assorted places in the public thoroughfare. And something about the windows on the rear facade not being in keeping with the building. 247 West to install new windows. It's a building that they showed the original with one kind of windows, and the ones there are actually better suited to what was a complete renovation in the 20s. Approved. 257 West 4th Street, a rooftop bulkhead and a rear extension, and neither is objectionable. Approved. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So we have items 1 through 4. Anybody want to call out any of those items for discussion? Okay, I don't see.
Let me say one thing. In the Broadway, we had exceptional and very good testimony from the numerous members of the neighborhood, for which we were grateful.
And that was on the first item, 462.
Yeah,
Broadway.
the bank on Broadway.
So I don't see anybody. I don't see anybody hands raised, or don't see anybody making any motions to call out any items. So I'm going to move to that all 4 resolutions are moved into the omnibus bill, which are the vote that we're going to have at the end of the meeting. Is there any objection to that? Okay, we'll move those in. Next, we have schools and education. Janine Kylie.
Okay. We had 2 resolutions this month, both unanimously passed. The first is a resolution in support of open streets and parks to support the safe reopening of New York City schools. Therefore, be it resolved that Community Board 2 urges the mayor and his deputies to function as school reopening czars to ensure that the New York City Department of Transportation and the Department of Education implement a fast-tracked and streamlined open streets program to close streets around schools before the expected start of the 2020-2021 fall public school term. That should be like a typo. And number 2, the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation, Hudson River Park, and other public and private open spaces provide priority access for students on school days. The second resolution is a resolution to prioritize remote learning and ensure the safe reopening of schools. And therefore be it resolved that Community Board 2 has repeatedly demanded effective, equitable, and excellent education for all New York City students during the pandemic through resolutions we passed unanimously in May, June, and July. 2, demands that the Department of remote learning for fall 2020. I'm going to turn my video off because it says it's unstable, which must include daily live instruction via video, professional development and planning time in trauma-informed schooling, and 3, insist that the DOE ensure that school buildings reopen only when they are safe for all teachers, students, and staff, which must include fully functioning HVAC systems, operable windows, and well-ventilated spaces, city-funded PPE, and city-funded frequent COVID testing. Again, both were unanimously passed. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Janine, and to your committee for all your hard work this month and in the past few months on all these items. I know it's a lot to keep track of, and things are changing every day. I see I have one question from Frederica. Did you want to call out either item, or did you want to make a?
I just wanted to ask Janine a question. Who is the second resolution? What agency is that directed at? And in response to what?
In response to, I mean, that resolution will go to the mayor and the chancellor. So for the lack of direction, I mean, I think what we've heard from.
We're losing you, Janine.
It'll go to both. I mean, we might, maybe we'll copy the unions on this as well. But that's who we're going to send it to.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other questions?
Yes. My hand's raised.
Oh, sorry, Georgia. Go ahead.
That's okay. It's not a question. It's a comment, and I just want to thank the schools committee, especially for the second resolution. Especially the third item, which is that schools should only be reopened if they are safe, not just for children and teachers, but all the other staff that work at the school, janitorial staff, lunch staff. So there are a lot of stakeholders in this, and they they don't have all equal voices. So thank you for including that in the resolution. Yes, and yeah, thanks a lot.
Great, thanks. And then Coral?
Yeah, so I just have a question as to what safe means, and maybe it needs to be defined in the resolution, because I mean, what does that mean?
You know, we intentionally did not define it. Yesterday, the UFT came out with a press release with, I think, a 2.5 page list of safe requirements. So depending on who you talk to, we are not, you know, we're not the Center for Disease Control. So our, you know, we're just broadly defining safe. It is not, you know, we are not epidemiologists, doctors, physicians, we're advocates. So we did not go into detail. Lots of different organizations have gone into that detail. And if you list 50 things, somebody's going to disagree with 3 of them, or maybe 10 of them, or 12 of them. The mayor is not going to look at our resolution and say, ah, okay. I mean, this is really more of a political statement that, you know, we need to prioritize safety, but we also need to prioritize the quality of the education.
Okay, I just might suggest saying as outlined by the CDC, period, as a friendly resolution, because otherwise, I mean, there's always going to be someone that says, if there's any possible risk, it's not safe. That's not really reasonable. Okay. So I think having some sort of definition at least sets a threshold that's by some expert, not by just a very, very nervous, ill-informed parent.
Yeah, and I think we did that in one of our past resolutions. Let me just check. The whole point of this was to be short, and it ended up not being as short as we wanted it to be.
No, I get it. I mean, I appreciate what you've done, and this is a complex thing. But
I mean, this is more of a political statement because we've passed many resolutions that have had, you know, ad nauseum footnotes and whatnot. So I'm sort of inclined to leave it out because I don't want to, at the end of the day, CB2 is not defining what safe is, and even the CDC is getting kind of political, and each organization is having their own. So I'm sort of inclined to just leave it simple.
Okay. I mean, I feel like the unions are definitely, they need to get their act together and figure out how to instruct these kids. And what
they're only focusing on safe right now.
I know, they're going to say it's not safe forever because they don't want to work. It's unbelievable.
I'm not sure the motivation, but
anyways, I made my point, but I think I can't support that.
Yeah. In our resolution in July, where we went into a 3 or 4 page resolution in support of open streets for schools and the safe reopening of schools, we have several footnotes. We talk about CDC's guidelines on May 19th. I have not gone to see if those have been updated. We had COVID-19 planning considerations by the American Academy of Pediatrics. And physical activity.
Those are all great.
So those are referenced in the previous resolutions, which are referenced in this resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, were there any other comments? Okay, is there any unwillingness to put those 2 resolutions into the omnibus vote? Okay, seeing no objection, we're going to move those 2 resolutions into the omnibus resolution vote. And the last committee report is the bylaws working group. Susan Kent.
Okay. Okay, I hope everyone had a chance to look at the report that the working group put together. This is part of an ongoing process, the review of the bylaws. Our first, because of timing considerations and the fact that next month starts an election cycle, that we first addressed the general topic of elections. The 4 parts of the report reflect what we feel are all of the relevant issues regarding elections. I think I will go through them one by one. The first one is the special term, and this was something that the committee felt was important because of term limits, which have taken effect as of last year. We felt that it was in the best interest of the board to align the terms of office with our terms on the board in order to prevent avoid having members become ineligible to run for office because their terms of office would end prior to their terms of service would end prior to their terms of office. In addition, there are benefits in the sense that we felt that by moving it to March, we would be in a month which is not influenced by holidays and therefore not by reduced attendance. We would also have people having sort of a whole year of service before they're asked to vote, so that they're best informed about what the offices are and who is running for them. What we did is we basically mirrored what was done 5 years ago, which was to create a special term of 4 months. When it was moved 5 years ago, the belief was that it was unfair to ask new members to vote for candidates whom they did not know. So the elections were moved from May to November. However, now that we're in the situation that we're in, it was felt advisable to move them to the period that we're now recommending. To be clear, the special term is a 4-month window. Anyone who's running for office will be running only for that 4 months. If they wish to continue, they will have to run again. While it is true that the term limits that are currently exist in our bylaws do not apply to this, that would be true whether it is someone who is currently serving or someone who will be serving in the future. The belief is that this would give the board a sort of maximum flexibility in terms of, who they were choosing, and at the same time, maximum transparency so that no one is serving except at the pleasure of the board. If there are any questions about this, if not, I will move on. I see, Carter, there are...
Go through and present the full report, and then we'll go back when people want to speak about what we can call out the different sections that people want to talk about.
Okay. The second section is the elections process itself. This section would replace what is now the elections section, Article 7 of our existing bylaws. The main goal of this section was to eliminate the elections committee, which over time we felt really didn't contribute much to the process, and in fact could create variances from year to year. The whole goal was to basically create a detailed, standardized process within our bylaws that will allow our candidates for elections to run smoothly and for information not to flow through any sort of temporarily established group, but directly to our members. And let's see. Number 3 being electronic voting. Of course, being in the situation we're in, we all are aware that for the foreseeable future, Zoom and electronic communication is how we're going to be doing things. Our bylaws currently don't provide for anything, so we created a process whereby we can, hopefully conduct our elections in an efficient and transparent manner, and at the same time have our results, in a timely manner, Number 4 being the special elections is currently our bylaws basically provide that if there's a vacancy, most important, the chair's vacancy, but that there's simply an order of succession that, you know, if the chair becomes vacant, the first vice chair steps in and they sort of move up the ladder. The committee felt that it wouldn't be in the board's, the board's interest would be better served if we were dealing with an extended period of 4 months or greater, that the board have an opportunity to weigh in on, you know, whom they would like to see as chair. At the same time, it was felt that it would be a burden to ask a first vice chair to automatically assume the chairmanship, and that it would, while a first vice chair could certainly run and then assume the chair, at the same time, it would give the board an opportunity to have input as to who would be serving. If you're talking about, you know, 8, 9 months or more, it was really a way of maximum participation. So, I guess if that makes sense, any questions?
Anybody want to call out specific items to discuss?
Shirley? Yeah.
Got your vote, Shirley. So I'll start with Dr. Smith. You're first. Did you want to call out a section to discuss?
Yes, I'd like to call out, I wasn't keeping up with the sections.
Well, why don't you just tell me which section instead of calling them out?
Okay. First of all, I'd like to say that you guys did a great job. Spent a lot of time, and you are, your document that you produced was very well put together. I do have a question about the purpose of, and I don't want to seem personal, eliminating the elections committee when it was not just me, but it was other people as well. And also that I'm interested in knowing why a secret voting. And third, when we spoke, you spoke about new people on the board, you know, having to maybe not know who the people are who's going to be representing them in these executive offices. I know in the past we had said, we had mandated that people who were running, even if they were running unopposed for the offices, should at least speak about what it is, what vision they have for the board. If new or old members would be interested in that. And I see that it looks like you all have made it now that it is optional as opposed to mandatory.
Okay, so that's section 2. So we'll call out section.
Well, section 2, all of 3 things I mentioned are different. All of them were section 2?
I believe so, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So section 2, and then Shirley.
Great.
Did you want to call out a section?
Oh, is it my turn now? This is Shirley's turn. Yes.
No, it's the second Shirley.
Yeah, second Shirley 2. Section 1, please.
Section
1 to do with the term limits and revisions according to term limits, right?
Okay.
Section 1.
Yeah. And then Michael?
I would like to call out section 3 regarding what I think is an excellent section, but might need a little bit touching up, and that is electronic voting.
Okay, and then Janet?
Oh, sorry. I'm just calling out the change in terms also.
Okay, so that's section, the special term is what you're talking about, section 1?
Section
1. And then Cormac?
Oh, I'm sorry. Michael already called it out. I'm going to go wait for that discussion.
Okay, so it looks like people want to discuss sections 1, 2, and 3. So Susan, you want to start with 1?
Okay, as I said before, we originally, you know, term limits are now part of the city charter. They took effect as of last year. We realized that if we hold elections and terms of office start as of December 1, anyone who will be term limited at, or is in their last year will basically be barred from running for office. And this would include, obviously, some of our most experienced members. And it was felt that it would simplify things a great deal if the terms of service on the board were aligned with terms of office, so that we wouldn't have people, and there will be actually a large number of people, one might assume, that would actually be barred from running for office. In order to have the greatest possible participation, by adjusting the election cycle, this sort of eliminates that problem. There are other benefits that are realized from that. First of all, as I said, when we changed them 5 years ago, it was because we felt that newly appointed members whose terms started in April really didn't have enough time to learn about the people they'd be voting for if elections were held in May. So which was the logic behind moving them to November. However, if you're giving people more time to learn about the board, and I think many of us have found that it takes months, sometimes years to learn, that having people participate in their first election when they've been through an entire year in the life of the board will actually increase their knowledge. It might even motivate them to want to run for office. The additional benefit is that our elections, when held in November, we tend to have lower than average participation in November as a holiday month. Whereas when you hold it in the spring, you avoid that, March being a sort of normal or average month. So all things considered, and the fact that we do not, we don't review our bylaws on a sort of a scheduled basis. It's something that we only look at every couple of years. So it was felt that if we're dealing with the subject of elections, we should be looking at the entire topic in a holistic way. And therefore, the idea of aligning the election cycle made sense to do now.
Great. Shirley, I see that you have your hand up.
Can't hear you.
Shirley Secunda, I see that you have your hand up.
Can't
Hear you. Okay, I'm unmuted now. Yes, can I speak to this now?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, first of all, thank you so much, Susan, and thanks to the Bylaws Committee. The hard work you did was so outstanding and obvious, and the professional manner in which you've approached this, I just think is tremendously impressive. I have to admit, I was kind of surprised that the whole bylaw issue even was coming to us this month at first. But then I realized that there is a necessity to address the idea of electronic voting. So we do need to address that. I understand that. I am totally perplexed as to why we're addressing this issue of term limits and aligning people's terms with term limits when term limits is just kicked in and it's going for 8 years. And this kind of concern about voting for a chair who may not have a full term, this isn't going to come up for years and years and years. So from my point of view, I really am kind of opposed to addressing this kind of thing. There can be all kinds of changes as these years go on. There was opposition, tremendous opposition, by the way, to every borough president but one, including very vehemently by our own Gail Brewer, certainly by many council people, including our own council speaker, Corey Johnson. And I think the feeling at the time was that they were going to work to try to take away this term limit requirement whenever the next charter is done. And in these recent years, charter revision comes very, very regularly and often. And as far as giving people the opportunity to learn about the boards, that was what we were all about in changing our bylaws last time, to allow new appointees to the board time to get to know what the board is about. I just feel really strongly that now is not the time to be urgent about, I guess, formulating these new bylaws to do with term limits. I think that, first of all, I think there's time. Second of all, I think that there is, at this time of all times, why should we be considering having 2 elections? And they would be two full elections, regardless of, even if one is only for 4 months. And why would we want to go to the trouble of that? As it is, we're going to have a tremendously challenging thing before us when we are doing the electronic voting. So I will tell you, I'm kind of opposed to that, and I feel there's time, and I feel even, let's say, the bylaws process is going to be going on, and it's going on for a while from what I understand. So there's some time, if we have to address this, still within the process, but a little later. Give us a little time to get our feet wet with this new term limits idea. And, let's concentrate on electronic voting.
Okay.
Great, thanks, Shirley. Janet?
Thank you. So, I mean, I agree too. I think it's noble. I think the basis of it makes a lot of sense. But one, when you run just the odds of 5 people out of 51 choosing the 8th year, you wind up with a fairly small percentage chance that this will actually happen. But that aside, I just want to sort of second what Shirley said, in that, look at this meeting. Like, we are in crazy times. And our plate is so full that there's just no rush. Like, it's a great idea. I just don't think this is the best time to address it. And perhaps when we have less to address in 2-3 years, we can revisit it. But I support the other things and support the feelings behind it. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Janet. Bo?
And I was just thinking, I don't see, it seems to be very inefficient to have 2 elections.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Bo.
Can't hear you.
Well, I'm unmuted. I don't know what to say.
So far from
What? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you need to be closer to your speaker.
Anyway, I just think that the idea of having 2 elections within 4 months is really a waste of time. And if you feel the need to change the term, which I think is a good idea, why don't we just have an election in November and increase the term of whoever gets elected in November by those 4 months? And then we'll be in sync and we'll have 1 election and it's pretty clean. I don't know why we wouldn't do it that way. If I remember correctly, I think you said it was 5 years ago, I think we did have a similar situation where we increased we had a one-time increase, or was it a decrease?
We did the exact same thing that the current proposal is, that we had an election for an abbreviated term.
Yeah, all right, well then I retract what I said, but I think that having 2 elections within 4 months is really a waste of time. We should just in November increase the term and that'll be it.
Okay.
And other than that, I support it.
Thanks, Bo. Dan?
Thanks. I just want to say that there's been a lot of great thought, great work that's been done in this. And I think that everybody has really compelling arguments. I think what Bo just said makes a lot of sense to me as well. But at the same time, the whole reasoning behind changing the bylaws is a really good one, which is aligning terms of office with the terms of other boards is really smart. It aligns us with community boards. It aligns us with the membership committee rules, for instance, at the Hudson River Park Advisory. And it also provides that learning curve for incoming new board members. So I really do think it's very smart and well written. But as Shirley was saying, and speaking with Corey's office, they're really trying hard to eliminate that 8-year term limit. And there are a lot of years, and I see it as maybe either it shouldn't be a rush to go ahead and do it right now, so that the board actually can decide who gets that longer term in a different way. I think I'm not opposed to the electronic voting or keeping it private so that there's no retribution against those and seeing those votes so that no one's punished for their vote, especially if it's an election that's contested. But anyway, I do want to commend the bylaws for thinking of this. And I definitely think eventually that we should have elections that result in new officers in April.
Hey, thanks, Dan. Just a reminder to everybody, we're just speaking with section 1 right now. Rocio? Rocio, you
thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to voice my opinion on this one. I thoroughly agree with Shirley, Bo, and Janet regarding this. I think I think it's a bit premature, and I think that I'm okay with the electronic. And I know that you, Susan, you put a lot of work and your committee did a lot of work. But I think that the comments that were said, actually, I was in favor of this, but I changed my mind because I hear my fellow board members telling me these things and they make sense. So I would like to oppose that section. Thank you.
Thanks, Rocio. Susan?
Hi, thank you. I agree with Shirley and Bo and Rocio now, and I had brought up the same question at exec last week because it just didn't make sense to me to do this separate 4-month election, and I said at the time, and I gave it more thought. I was glad some other people are questioning it. It just seemed to make more sense not to have the separate 4-month election. When the next chair is voted on, we then extend it the 4 months there, and it keeps it simple. I understand all the surround that you're saying, but I'm in favor of that route instead of the separate 4-month election.
Okay, thanks, Susan. Valerie?
Thank you. And thank you again to all of the hard work by the bylaws committee meeting weekly to work on this. And I know that your committee has really thought these things through and has had the foresight to think of all the different ways that this could go. So I would like to voice my support for section 1, and that I think it's a checks and balances on the volatility that we're currently experiencing right now. Instead of locking someone into that longer term, or perhaps giving someone a chance to try out maybe one of the other offices. But I think that just with the volatility, and we're still in the state of emergency, there's still all of these states on this advisory list. There's a budget shortfall at the state and local level. We're not getting federal stimulus anytime soon. It just seems as though this is just a checks and balances for the board. And I think I put my trust into the bylaws committee that they've proposed this to us. I will be supporting this section. I do have one question as to how will we be voting on this? Will we be voting on this by different sections or as a whole?
Yeah, obviously it seems like people are going to have different votes on different sections. So when we do vote on this, people will be able to vote on item, I guess we'll section them out as item 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I'll clarify. If somebody wants to have a dissenting vote or an affirmative vote on any section, they can indicate at that time.
You can vote on it as a block, or you can voice.
Well, it sounds like there's going to be an objection to that, so some allow people to vote on the different sections when we get to that point.
Okay, thanks.
Bob, Ely?
Yeah, I guess I'm in support of it as it's written. I think the criticism that I've heard, and I understand it, but the criticism that I've heard in opposition is that this is premature. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's premature at all. In fact, it's addressing a change in the law that has occurred. If that change in law goes back, if somehow it gets reversed, then we as a community board have the option again of changing our bylaws to conform with the change in term limits if they're taken away. But at this point in time, we have term limits. So I just don't, I mean, there's a criticism that's premature, but I don't understand how that criticism should prevent the progress that's necessary and is quite reasonable and well written. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Matt?
I want to reiterate what Bob said much more eloquently than I could have, and also say that the way that it is written in order to provide the board the most amount of say. There was a concern that if for a longer term would deny the board as much say as possible, and this way maximizes it. I don't think it's premature. I think it's pretty measured. I certainly will be supporting it. So thank you.
Great, thanks. Dr. Smith?
Yes. First, I'd like to just say that for the last 5 years, as things have changed, I want to thank not only the hardworking committee members on the nominating committee, of which I chaired, as well as the election committee on which I chaired. It was an honor, and I thank all of the members of my peers who voted for us. However, I do take exception to the comment that was made that the election committee did not contribute much to the process. I don't know if others who served in the last 5 years on these various boards would feel that way, but I feel compelled as chair to say that. And second, with the secret voting, how did that come about? What's the merit in secret voting?
Yeah, Shirley, we're not on section 2 yet, so I just want to
Oh, wait. Oh, I'm sorry. The secret voting is 2?
I just want to just to not have this be too confusing.
Thank you. Okay. But talking about the election committee that did not contribute much to the process, is that 3?
No, that is the election.
You told me all of them were 3. Which one is that one?
That's the section 2, the election of the officers.
So then
I'll call on you first, right when we get to that. I don't think we have anybody else left on this, but let me just make sure. And is there anybody else who wants to speak to number 1, the special term?
Your board meeting. I'll call you when I'm finished. Okay.
Okay. So, Susan, you have any issue with moving to section 2? You're muted. Susan, you're muted.
I know, I recognize. No, I appreciate all the comments, and I understand the interest in moving in a deliberate way. Just to sort of reiterate the working group's sort of mindset was that we were dealing with the subject of elections as a whole, and we did not want to do things piecemeal. I didn't feel that it was fair to sort of just kick something down the road for the next committee or working group to deal with. And as it's been said, there's been a change in the law, and I work based on the current state of the law. So I definitely see the other side to, we have time, but just the consensus of the group came out the way it did. So that's it, but thank you.
Okay, so I think we've concluded the discussion on section 1 on special terms, so we'll move on to section 2, which is the election of officers. Did you want to briefly address anything, Susan, before we?
Let's hear. I mean, Dr. Smith let's go back to what she was saying.
Okay.
I thank you for that, Susan. I don't have to repeat what I said about taking exception to the comments. I don't know if the members on who served in the last 5 years on those committees also felt the same way I do, but as chair of all of them, and that's what I wanted to definitely take exception to. The second thing is secret voting. Why are we changing it? What was the thinking behind secret voting?
Okay. Well, secret voting is the norm in our society and all of our elections. If, in fact, the idea that we have open ballots is rather atypical. And people, many people over a long period of time have expressed concern that someone could go back, look at who voted for them, who voted against them, and make decisions based on whether or not they received someone's support. Your vote should be your vote, and you shouldn't have to be answerable to anyone for that. We certainly will be keeping, you know, things will be just as secure, but yeah, it's the idea that someone could be penalized for voting their conscience, basically.
Has that happened with anyone on the board, to your knowledge?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, yes.
And actually, I'm gonna call on David next because he had spoken about this at the meetings. David, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Thank you, Claudia. We have had in the past a problem with other chairs, and not anybody in current memory, but we've had other chairs who have, especially in a contested election, who have looked in and saw who voted for who. This is really a personnel issue. And as Susan said, it's the American tradition. Our vote should be sacred. It should be secret. It should have no ramifications. It should have no consequences, whether you get appointed to this committee or that committee, or whether you're not in favor with the chair. It has happened before. It hasn't happened in recent memory, but it's happened before. So I am very strongly in favor of keeping our votes confidential. There's no reason why they shouldn't be confidential. And you vote your conscience and with no ramifications. And that's why we put it in there. And I feel strongly about it.
And let me say this, since votes also, we are public and we make public, are those decisions of votes, can't someone come in and look at it publicly because we are a public body?
Well, the feeling was that this comes under sort of the personnel where we shut the board just for the community board. And
to be clear, the election has to do with a purely internal matter. As such, it isn't something that is open. It doesn't require the same level of public inspection. It doesn't.
And what about open meetings law? It's not apply. That does not apply.
No,
this is a purely internal matter. That's why.
Okay. There's no public action that we're taking.
Shirley Secunda.
Okay.
Can't hear.
I just want. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to point out section 2, the process I have no objections to, but the dates are already stating the proposed change of dates. So in other words, the change from the current process of starting in September and then voting in November is on the dates that have been inserted here are the starting in.
You're absolutely right. And if
January and then voting in March. So for that alone, I wouldn't vote for it because it is related to section 1 and the whole idea of formulating this new schedule around the new term limits.
I think it's fair to say that if section 1 does not carry that, or if it that the second is automatically amended. I don't think that.
Yes, I will accept a friendly amendment to adjust the dates to conform to our current.
Oh, okay.
No problem there.
Right. Okay.
Thanks, Adam.
I was just going to point out that I'm not sure I see the parallel between, our voting for our chair and then the American experience of voting for an elected official. You know, voting for the chair is it's a part of our deliberative assembly process. And I think that other deliberative assemblies have public open elections for those board positions. Not necessarily universally, but
I'm actually not. To my knowledge, the norm is that votes are kept confidential and they're not subject to review. And as was mentioned, the possibility that people could have their votes held against them, I think, is a compelling reason. Actually, the idea that it's, I don't see how the public would be served because, you know, this is, as I said before, it's an internal matter. It has to do with who we're choosing. I don't know what else to say about that.
And just for clarification, it's for all offices, not just for one.
Correct.
For all.
And most of the other boards, only I think one other board has it, where it's mandated to be public. I think all the other boards, you know, have moved into having these votes confidential.
Dr. Smith?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I've already made my case, but no one has been definitive unless it's a thing you don't want to share. I've been on the board for quite a while, and I have never heard of anyone taking personal reprisals against someone who did not vote for them.
Well, surely I'm a case in
David
point.
has been on the board. I think he and I don't know, he might have been on longer than me, but I know I've never heard of it. So if you want to share that with me.
Sure, I'll share my personal experience. I was kept off the board for a year because I would not share who I was going to vote for chair of the board when I was originally appointed by former borough president Virginia Fields. And they never provided me with my appointment letter, even though I was called down and attended the training as having been appointed to the board. I mean, this is not, you know, in that distant the past, but I'm not supporting either way because I think everybody's got their strong positions on this, but it has happened, you know, in the past. And
thank you for saying that, but Virginia was not a member of our board. She was the board president. It made it seem like someone on community board 2 had been affected.
Oh, no, community board 2.
Community board 2.
No, I'm not sure what position he had at that time, but somebody from the board called me up and asked me who I was going to vote for. And I said, I'm not comfortable sharing that with you. And I never got my appointment letter. So
right. That was communicated to the borough president, who then declined to send the letter.
I see. Thank you.
And Shirley, I'd like to apologize if I gave you the impression, or I gave anyone the impression that the nominating committee or the elections committee has not been an important part of our process to date. It was simply something about having more of a standardized, you know, I know last year the elections committee produced a very lengthy and well-detailed report. I think we felt it would simplify the process if the requirements were actually set out in the bylaws instead of having a committee generate a new report every year.
I thank you for that, but I still take exception to not contributing much to the process. So if that can be worded in some other way, and that could be, you could strike that that verbiage, then I would, not just me, I don't know of other people who have worked in the last 5 years on these committees. We did the very best we could with the directions that we were given. But I do thank you, Susan, for your comment. And if you're saying it as an apology, I accept it. It's just that I just took exception to not contributing. The verbiage did not contribute much to the process.
Okay.
I've got three hands up. I've got Bob Ely, and then Georgia, and then Keen.
Sandy Russo?
And then Sandy, sorry, I've got more people than fit on my screen. So if you're waving and you're not on my screen, I can't see you. So Bob?
Yeah, I would just say, just to pinpoint the one issue as to the confidential voting, it's the potential, okay, that it could occur. Okay, we do have evidence that it's happened in the past. You know, it's digging up things that we probably don't really want to talk about. But the reality is that it causes a potential for that to occur, and there's absolutely no reason for that. And in a confidential vote, there's also a chilling effect. So you're looking over your shoulder because you know your vote's public as to who you're voting for. And you know, look, when it's a competitive voting situation, you want to vote for the person that you want to vote for, and not, you know, who you think might get elected because you're concerned that they'll get elected and then they see that you didn't vote for them. So there's multiple factors into why it should be confidential. Thank you.
Georgia?
Hi, would the public be able to request information about who voted how? Is that something that's happened in the past?
I mean,
it's in the chat right now. I think that that somebody had mentioned that they had access to those. I mean, that's public foilable information. So yes, as it stands now.
Thank you.
As it stands now, but.
Keen?
There she.
I don't see.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes, we can, yeah.
Okay. I personally experienced retribution for one of my votes for chair. So I just want you to know it's a real thing. That's it.
Thank you, Keen, for sharing that with us. Sandy.
I understand this hesitation about making it public because people can, well, what Keen just said, you know, be upset with who you voted for. On the other hand, that maybe that problem or that intimidation should be addressed. And I am for open ballot because we're community representatives. You know, when other, you know, when our state assembly and, you know, senators, we know what they voted for and who they vote for. And I think that that's an important information that the community is entitled to. You know, who are you voting for? Who do you support to be chair of CB2? That's an important decision, an important vote, and people in the community are entitled to know who supported and how many. And, you know, I just think that our votes should be public. We demand that of other politicians and other community representatives. So why not, you know, demand it of us?
Well, all of our votes in terms of how we vote on resolutions or any of those things remain public. Our positions and where the positions we take and who joins them and who doesn't is public record, and that doesn't change. So I think
so why shouldn't the vote be public record? Yes, I know everything is public record. I know everything is recorded and people can ask to hear the recording or get a printout, you know, a transcript. But so I don't see why this one particular act, which is really important, you know, who are the chairs and co-chairs and going to be for the next 2 years or whatever. I think that's important that people know where you stand.
Well, I mean, to reiterate, it's like if it has a chilling effect, if it inhibits people from causing them to alter the votes, then it has a compelling reason. You know,
but that's the problem. You got to address the intimidation.
Before we go back and forth, I think, Sandy, I think your point is very clear and well, you know, made very well as far as, you know, that's, and David, do you want to?
No, I mean, there are other things that we vote on in private, people's raises, how much we're going to pay them. We close the entire board to the public for that. There's no foil, there's no transcripts, there's no video. And I just feel that I'm not sure it's the public's right to know how you voted for chair. It is an internal matter. We're not taking a public policy on anything. Sandy, I would agree with you. All things that we vote on that affects the public, that resolutions, it should be open. But I don't think that this vote, which does have ramifications, Keene just said it, I also have had some ramifications with it, and I'm not going to get into it, but Carter has. So there's a problem here, and I think that it should be within the board, and I think that your vote is sacred to you, and nobody should be looking over your shoulder and saying, aha, you didn't vote for me. I'm the chair now, you didn't vote for me. So that's where I'm coming.
Yeah, thanks, David. I just want to make sure everybody on the board that we're clear that the votes within board members are very different from personnel issues within the office. And so let's not confuse those two issues, because that is separate as far as employees of the board.
Right, just saying that we do have.
But I'm just clarifying because you hadn't separated those out. Matt?
Thank you for that clarification. I was getting ready to say that.
Matt?
I was only going to mention that I was originally very hesitant to endorse secret balloting until I looked into it, and most of the party leadership in DC, because it's a party election for who gets put up for Speaker of the House or whatever, is by secret ballot. And it got me a lot more comfortable with the idea, as was the impeachment trial. There are a number of instances where large bodies have agreed that it is the better way, and I think it is here too.
Okay. I had a question because for you, Susan, because I'm hearing that clearly some different issues. Is that something that you might consider that we vote separately on that one item, because that I didn't hear anybody speaking to any other issues in this section. I wouldn't.
The goal here.
I'm just throwing this out because when I get to the vote part of this, I don't want it to be complicated, so I'm trying to address it beforehand.
Absolutely. The goal here is that we have consensus, and that if it's an element that would, that can be, taken as a separate, I'm not insisting that it's an all or nothing. Absolutely not.
Okay.
I think given the fact that there are those of us who don't agree with this secret ballot, that it should be a separate vote.
Yes, absolutely.
So is that, you accept that as a friendly amendment, but we'll just, we'll have that.
Yes, we can vote on this. Absolutely, we can vote on this.
Okay, so we'll pull out that one section just on that. Okay. Is there any other discussion? Matt, did you have a, Matt, or did I not lower your hand?
No, I'm sorry, you didn't lower my hand. Sorry.
Okay. All right, so have we concluded the discussions on the election of officers? Everybody is good. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the third section, which is the electronic voting. I think Matt, you had, or excuse me, Michael Levine, you had.
Yes, I'm sorry, am I on?
Yes, you are, Michael. Go ahead.
Okay, I would like to, as everyone else has done, congratulate the committee on an excellent job of putting forward some very, very comprehensive recommendations to amend the bylaws. And I'm only going to address the electronic voting, which I think is very complicated and difficult to figure out. In the introduction, it says due to the COVID crisis, and I think electronic voting in the future may be necessary for other purposes, not just because of the COVID crisis. So I'm glad to see that it is going to be a part of our bylaws. My problem here is I'm not clear on one aspect of how the voting would work. It says that the district manager shall distribute ballots to all of the members present based upon a roll call just prior to the distribution. Then it says the ballots shall be collected and distributed to the 3-member tally committee. It doesn't say how. It looks as though it might be complex. Do the ballots go to each individual of the 3 members, which makes it very cumbersome? Or are the ballots collected then by the district manager, who batches them and sends them to the tally committee? It seems like a very complicated process, and I think we want to make it as simple as possible for the tally committee. So that's my first question. I think we need clarification before we're asked to vote on this section as to how that would work. District manager distributes the ballots go back to the district manager, and the district manager then distributes it to the tally committee. I believe that this is what was intended by the bylaws working group. My second comment and I see Susan raising her head, so I think we just need to make sure that the language is amended to include that. Number two, there is language that says, or there can be another process that the district manager would initiate whereby electronic balloting is done in a different way other than the system that is described above. So I'm wondering, is that language going to show up in the bylaws as well? Or are we just going to go with the language described with the tally committee? How would that look in the final version of the bylaws that we are being asked to adopt? The tally committee and or a different system that the district manager might want to implement in the future? It's a little bit unclear as to how we would be making a decision tonight. Susan, if you could answer that, I'd really appreciate it. I think the bylaws working group did a great job. This is a complicated section. I congratulate you on it, but it needs a bit of clarification.
Absolutely. You know, that's what we need to hear, because when you're you know, a small group of people looking at this, it's not always apparent if there are ambiguities. The description that is in 7A, I mean, in subsection A, is what exists if we do not have, I mean, I should say, the subsection B exists so that if the district manager can present an application from a third-party source, whether it is commercially available, it is free, it is provided by the city, that streamlines it. It's really sort of a complement to the preceding section, in that if you don't have an app that will do this for you, then we have a process where using email that will allow us to communicate. But that if we can have an app that will allow us to send out the ballots and have them come back, that if it's reliable enough and if the board approves it, then we can rely on that instead.
Now, lacking that, though, if we are going to use a process whereby the district manager distributes the ballots.
Yeah, Michael, that's very straightforward email that's sent to every board member. That's an individual email. And either it's going to come from specifically a separate email that the board establishes, like elections@cb2manhattan.org, or it will include all three names of whomever is the tally committee, so that when you reply, it goes to all three.
So it goes automatically to all three members of the tally committee without going through the district manager. They receive.
No, the district manager would be included. It's just like if I sent you an email and I sent an email to Susan Kent and Sandy Russo, you know, if I send it to you and then you hit reply all and everybody is on there and gets the email back, same way.
And let's hope that it will all work in one night. It is a complicated procedure, and I think it's well thought out, and I'm really hopeful that it can work within the time frame of one meeting. Thank you, committee, for your excellent work.
And I see Sandy is making a lot of gestures, so I'm gonna, she hasn't spoken on this, so I'll call her. Sandy.
Well, there goes the confidentiality.
Right, there wasn't a way,
I mean, there's,
right?
It's completely discordant with the section before that we were talking about, anonymous versus anonymous.
Well,
I think it's nuts.
Well, I would say, yes, you are right that there is an electronic record. The question becomes, are the records open for examination?
The people who are doing the tallying know who voted for whom.
Right, and
so there goes, it's not anonymous. It's
okay.
Free.
Okay.
Excellent point.
There are 3 people who are going to be entitled to know how anyone voted, but the rest of us, it's nuts. It's nuts.
Yeah. Dr. Smith.
Thank you, Carter. I am not sure. You said for me when I was talking about the candidates and how it was changed for them to speak required, and you guys said it wasn't required. You said that was 3. Is that section 3?
No, that was section 2. Do you want to speak to that?
Well, no. Well, I want to speak to the close. If you want to continue with 3, you guys can go on, but I want to go back to that and make my point.
Okay, fair enough. You did bring that up before, so that's we'll go back to that. Okay, Cormac.
Yeah. So first of all, as others have said, Susan, to you and everybody on your committee, great work, and I know it was a lot of work, and I really appreciate it. Bylaw stuff is grueling, and thank you. Addressing this section, it's something Michael touched on. In the little preamble, you make reference to COVID, but nowhere where I read this, and I'm not a lawyer, so maybe I have this wrong, does it say that electronic voting is only for the duration of the COVID crisis? Which suggests to me that we're basically putting the bylaws to have electronic voting in the future, but we also do not specify anywhere here under what circumstances or conditions would we have electronic voting as opposed to the other, or at whose discretion, who makes that decision?
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in because Gail actually addressed this when she was speaking to us, because this is determined by the governor's suspension of the public officers law. Without that suspension, we're required to meet in person. And so that would essentially eliminate this. So unless there are any changes to that.
All I want to know. Thank you. I'm out. And I'll be voting for this.
Dan?
Yeah, when it comes to anonymity, you can give codes on SurveyMonkey or other types of ways to vote without maintaining your anonymity. So there are very simple free programs out there that could make this possible and very quick and not take up any board time, where everybody fills out the survey with their code number. So it is possible. It doesn't have to be done by email. That's all I wanted to say.
Right. Right.
Katie?
Katie.
Let me just make sure she can. Katie, I'm trying to unmute you, but I cannot. You may have to. There you go.
Okay, there I am. I didn't lower my hand in time. I was agreeing with Daniel. There are other systems that we can have anonymous voting. We just haven't investigated all of them yet, but they're a double-blind system. So I think we should continue to pursue it to get the exact mechanism that works for us. But it's not necessarily going to be a problem. There are enough systems out there. Thank you.
Great, thanks. David, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Just last one, I think Sandy did see something in the electronic voting, which is true. But the thing is, there's the caveat that we put in, and we have time to figure out exactly how to do it. Dan is talking about other methods. So is Katie Bordenero. So we could make it confidential. And you're right, Sandy, the way it stands now, there's a flaw in it. We recognize that when we did it, but the caveat gives us time to work on it. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other discussion on this session? Valerie?
Thanks. Just so everyone's clear, can you just reiterate who sits on that tally committee in case that was brushed over? Thanks.
It's a 3-person committee. It is the representative of the borough president. It is a representative of another elected official, and it is a committee chair chosen, however we can vote on, we can ask for a volunteer from among our committee chairs. And it's those 3 people.
Okay, is there any other discussion on section 3? Okay, Dr. Smith, you had a comment that you wanted to make on section 2.
Thank you, Carter. Yes. In the past, and for the amount of time that I've been on the board, people always, because they feel they either want to, for whatever reason, they nominate themselves. And it was said that, and we always required in the past that even if it wasn't an uncontested line, that the person should at least spend about 5 minutes talking about who they are, what they bring to that, and what would be their vision and their what plans would they have for moving the board forward if they are elected to the position. And now I see that it is not required, but it is recommended. And I feel strongly that it, even uncontested, people should say who they are, what is their plan for moving the board forward, not just to be voted into an office and you don't really see any kind of real leadership.
Okay. Well, what we have here, it is at the option of the candidates. I think it was felt that since it's certainly in a candidate's interest to want to speak, that, you know, just for someone to forego that would really, you know, they'd be doing themselves a disservice. And of course, the people who are voting can impute the fact that somebody doesn't really want to share, you know, what their thoughts and plans are, and can take that into account when they're voting.
Okay, thanks. Lois?
Well, that being said, Susan, there's no yes or no vote and on the ballot as it is right now. So I agree with Shirley Smith, doctor, that the person who is uncontested should speak. The 2 minutes, or I read it was 2 minutes, but I think they should have 3 minutes, because in the past there have been, if you call them candidates, because they're automatically voted in because there's no contest, that you don't know who they are. They put their name in, no one runs against them. They could be a first-term person or a first few months person, and you don't know who they are. And I agree with Shirley that it's an obligation that they should say who they are, a little bit about their interest of why they're running and their experience. And as I said, there's no yes or no vote, so the person automatically gets in.
Thanks, Lois.
Comments?
No comment.
Cormac?
I have a comment.
Cormac?
Sorry, I suddenly realized I was all masked and muted. So, yeah, I mean, I just want to say that I really strongly disagree with the views just expressed. I think it is true that candidates should be given the opportunity to express themselves if they want to. But there's something that I feel is not only unnecessary, but just kind of cruel and slightly undemocratic about compelling them to make, you know, a speech or a statement. And, you know, and Dan Miller can talk to this, 2 minutes is an awful long time in communication terms, actually, for people to speak and for people to talk. And I just don't think that it should be an obligation or requirement. If people feel like people know me and I'm just putting my name up there and they can vote for me or not, I think that's good. And the idea that, no, we must make them do a dog and pony show and we must make the rest of us sit through the dog and pony show, it seems to me utterly ridiculous and frankly a little bit mean-spirited.
Cormac, thank you for sharing that.
I'd like to respond.
Yeah, Dr. Smith.
My hand is raised.
No, I said I was calling on you next.
Thank you. Obviously, I do not agree with the statement that was just made. Everybody here is a volunteer. And yes, we know people, it depends on if you really, there's people on the board I know better than others, and for a whole lot of reasons. And I'm sure the rest of you all can say that about yourselves. But when it comes to to putting your name down, this is a leadership. Let's not forget that. It's not just the title. It is, where are we taking the board? What kinds of new things are you going to do? Or is it just because you want to be the chair, vice chair, or you have, maybe it's important for you because you plan to run a public office, or, you know, everybody uses, as I've said, I've been on the board a long time. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so that is my opinion. But I think to say that it's mean-spirited, is not a good, I don't think that that's necessary to say, because everybody has an opinion, but I don't think you need to color it. Who was the last person that spoke? Oh yeah, Cormac.
Yeah, as another note, I don't recall in my length of service on the board anybody running for the first time for an office ever not speaking, even before when we didn't require it. So just pointing that out. For, you know, subsequent elections, that's true. But just as a point.
You're younger than me, so your memory might be better than mine. I don't, I'd have to think about that, so I have no response to what you just said, other than you could be right.
Thanks. Rocio, you haven't had a chance to speak on this yet. Go ahead.
Well, I think I go back as long as Shirley and Ed Ma, which is a long time, right, Shirley?
Right.
We've gone back, Shirley, Sakunda actually, and Ed Ma and Doris. We are the longest serving board members of this board. And this thing about speaking started just a few years ago, maybe about 7 years ago, that it was almost mandated that people had, I didn't really think it was necessary. And, you know, it's a thing, but I'm listening to everybody speaking and I'm thinking, you know, I don't know if everybody is in agreement with everything that is being said. And you changed my mind on some sections here. So maybe we should consider sending it back to the committee so that we could actually iron out the differences that so many of you are saying. It might be worthwhile doing it. There is no urgency to have this vote tonight. Can we all sleep on it? Maybe next month we can take it up. Is this something that you might consider, Susan?
Actually, elections, there is a time sensitive because the election cycle does start next month, and it would be inappropriate to change the bylaws affecting elections during an election cycle. That's why the committee worked, met as often as it did, so that something could be presented to the board, so that we would have, our bylaws would be updated to reflect voting policy.
Okay, so the some of the provisions that you have presented I'm okay with. The electronic, I think it's a must. I think we should consider passing that at this time, but I don't know if the rest of the items need to be passed.
Okay, thanks. Georgia?
I'm honestly utterly confused about the different sections of this conversation at this point.
We went back to discuss, we're discussing section 2, the election of the officers right now.
Yeah, I know, but we've been discussing this bylaw section and taking it piece by piece. And now I've sort of lost the thread because it's been a very long conversation. And I'm curious when we might vote on this, or as Rocio just suggested, maybe push it to next month. Appropriate doesn't mean that it can't be, inappropriate doesn't mean that it can't be done. I'm just sort of, I just want to say it's 9/21 and it is the week of the Democratic National Convention. It is, I believe it's the last evening. Thank you.
Okay, David?
Yeah, maybe we could say that they have the option of speaking or sending in a letter that's distributed to the entire board before the election, explaining their vision of what they want to do. And I don't think that we have to hear from the secretary. I think that's a thing for the chair. So if that ameliorates the problem, I don't think it's a problem, but a letter and or the option to speak. And would you accept that as a friendly amendment?
Well, the opportunity to send in a statement is already in there.
Okay, so we have the statement.
After they've been nominated.
Okay, so we have the statement and it's distributed to the entire board. So I think that does it.
Right. And I would like to say, I think very highly of my fellow board members. I think that they want the opportunity to speak and to share what they, what they think of the board and what they think are the issues. And I would trust in their discretion. If they feel that, if somebody felt they didn't need to speak, it's because, in their opinion, everyone knows where they stand. So I will just leave it at that.
Okay, Amy?
Yeah, hi. I've been listening to, and I am backing Georgia and Rocio that I think tonight we could vote on 3 because we do have to agree to do electronic balloting. But I think there's enough conversation here and enough disagreeing opinions, and there's so many numbers that maybe we put off everything else till next. We can even wait, well, until next month, because I agree, it may be not usual, but maybe we needed a little more time on this and have a few more conversations before voting on it as a whole.
3 doesn't work. Unfortunately, 3 does not work without 2, because 3 is a mechanism for making 2 work in a virtual world.
And also, we still have another section to discuss. So, Dr. Smith?
Yeah, I think we have another section? Okay, I think we should vote tonight.
Okay, and so I'm not seeing any other discussion on this. Let's go to the last one.
I didn't want to use that right ice in the shade.
I don't think that anybody had called out the last section, but it's just on special elections. I just want to make sure that that's the case. I don't see any hands.
Okay.
That are going up. Okay, so.
Going gone.
So the items that are before us, and it's obvious that the vote on this is going to be a little bit. So we're going to have section. Hold on a second. Let's get back here. Section 1, which is the special term, is going to be 1 vote. We're going to have section 2. There's going to be a vote on 1 portion of it, which is the secret ballot, and then on the section as a whole, and then on section 3 and section 4. Is that correct, Susan? So everybody understands?
That's my understanding.
Okay, so what we're going to do as we go through, and I can clarify this as we're going through, Valerie's going to ask, and people, if you have an exception to any one of those, we can note the exception. So it would be voting for section 1, which is the special term. Section 2 is the election of officers. The subsection to that is whether or not vote is secret. Then there's section 3, which is on electronic voting, and then section 4 on the special election. So is everybody clear on that?
Carter, can I ask a point of clarification?
Sure, go ahead.
With regards to section 2, did they accept that friendly to remove the requirement to speak?
Susan did not remove it.
So if I'm unhappy with a particular section, I have to vote down the entire bill or that part of it?
There, yes.
What you're in a sense that it's speaking is at the option of the nominee.
Okay, that's different than I understood the discussion earlier.
No. Right.
Also, Susan, special elections, that's different from the 4 months, correct?
Correct. That is to fill vacancies when they are
when they occur.
When they occur.
Yeah, yes. I want to be sure. Thank you.
Okay, great. So, so Valerie, you want to start? Obviously, we'll do this as a roll call.
Yep. Bylaws section 1 term limits is what are we? Am I asking? I'm sorry.
We're going to call on each person, and they can
person and get their vote for each
right.
5 things, right? Okay.
Right. If it's
right.
Small, if they have a specific
different sections. Okay. Perfect.
And if you're siding with the committee, what is that? That is voting yes.
In favor.
In favor.
Or
yeah.
against, abstain, recusal, correct?
Right.
Okay.
And you can vote different ways on each section. That's why we're breaking it up.
And if anybody has a question on what the specific things are, I can clarify it as we call their name.
So is there a special
I will repeat again the votes. Number 1, we're voting on sorry, I just have in front of me, the special term is how people will vote on that. Section 2 is the election of officers. The subset is whether or not it's secret.
Right.
Section 3 is
Electronic voting.
the electronic voting. Thank you, Shirley.
Mhm.
And then section 4 is the special elections. Okay, Valerie?
Great. Akila Asqui.
Yes.
So I guess I'll just ask individually. Bylaws section 1, term limits.
Yes.
Okay. Section 2, election of officers for the entirety.
Yes.
For section 2, election of officers, the secret ballot.
Yes.
Bylaw section 3, electronic voting.
Yes.
And section 4, special elections.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Point of information.
Yes, go ahead, Matt.
Sorry, I think when you phrase it as to vote yes on the secret ballot, voting yes would be voting against the. I'm sorry, voting yes would be with the board, with the committee, or without.
That's correct, with the committee.
Okay.
Ballot. And also, if people, you can jump ahead and say if you support all of them as well, just in the interest of time.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, yeah, great. Yeah, if you support others, one you want to call out is voting differently, then please do that, and that'll make us go quicker. Not that I don't mind getting each individual. Individually, just won't need to speak it out. Okay, William Benesh.
I vote yes to all as written by the committee.
Great. Okay, Keenberger.
Yes to all.
Thank you. Carter Booth.
Yes, except for the secret ballot. I vote against that.
Which number is the secret ballot, Valerie?
It's section 2, and it's the remember we're voting on section 2 and 2 separate things. One is for it holistically, and then one is for just the secret ballot. And a 4.
So that's the third. That's the third one.
Yeah, that's the
So
third.
Carter, what is your vote?
It's yes for all except the secret ballot.
You're against secret ballots. Okay. Thank you.
Katie Bordenaro.
Yes for all.
Thank you. Okay. Anita Brandt.
Yes for all.
Thank you. Okay. Amy Brenna.
Yeah, no on section 1, yes for everything else.
Okay. Rich Cacapolo.
Yeah, I'm going to support, I'm going to vote yes, in line with the committee on all.
Coral Dawson.
I'll vote yes with the exception of the secret ballot. I don't think that's necessary nor helpful.
Thank you. Because I've been trying to get this spreadsheet. I need a vote for, it's my vote, for the secret ballot. Voting for it here means you're in favor of having a secret ballot. It's the opposite, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I will voice my vote. I am voting yes to all except for the secret ballot. I am voting against that. So kind of meta to share my vote about the ballot. Okay, John Paul DeVerna. Is he muted? John.
Yes, yes to all as the committee laid out.
Okay, Doris Deether. Let me make sure she's unmuted.
Doris, I think you have to dial *6 on your computer, on your phone, *6. We can't unmute you.
I can't unmute her.
So Doris, you want to dial *6?
So weird because we used to be able to unmute her before.
Yeah, I think they made a change. Okay, Bob, maybe you can.
Bob, maybe call her on the phone while we take the rest of the votes, maybe.
Well, she's on the phone right now for the meeting.
Okay, we'll circle back on that.
Bob Ely?
Yes to all.
Thanks. Okay. Mar Fitzgerald?
Yes to all.
Thanks. Cormac Flynn?
Yes to all.
Thanks. Joseph Gallagher?
Hi, I vote no on one and yes to the rest.
Thank you. David Gruber?
Yes to all.
Okay. Wayne Kwadler?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Any, sorry, Susan Kent?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Janine Kiley?
Yes to all.
Betty Kubovi Weiss?
Yes to all.
Michael Levine? Excuse me.
Yes to all.
Janet Liff?
No to one, yes to the balance.
Okay, no to one. What about to section 2 as a whole is also voted on separately?
Yes, that's fine.
And you said no to the
Just
secret?
the first.
What's that?
Just the first. No to the first one.
So not no to the secret ballot?
Correct.
So yes. So there, okay, got it. Sorry. Got no for number 1 and yes for everything else. Got it. Ed Ma?
Yes to all.
Great. Matt Metzger?
Yes to all.
Daniel Miller?
Yes to all.
Brian Pape?
Yes to all.
Donna Raftery?
Yes to all except the secret ballot.
Okay. Lois Rackhoff?
Yes to all.
Okay. Bo Riccobono?
No to one and yes to the rest.
Okay. Sandy Russo?
Remind me, one is which one?
One is the term limits.
Oh, yeah. No to one and no to secret ballot.
Great. Rosie abstains?
I would say abstain from all and yes to electronic.
Okay. I love a community board meeting.
Okay. Great. Scott Sartiano?
Yes to all.
Okay. Shirley Secunda?
No to one, yes to the rest.
Thank you. Kristen Shea?
Yes to all of them.
Frederica Siegel,
Yes to all.
Georgia Silvera Siemens,
No to secret ballots.
but yes to the rest.
Yes.
Dr. Shirley Smith,
Yes. Term limits, no.
term limits, no. Okay.
No. Secret voting, no. Electronic voting, yes. Special elections, yes. The first 3, 4, the first one, you got it, right? Term limits, no. Elections, no, the first part. The subsection, secret voting, no. Electronic voting, yes. And special elections, yes.
Chenault Spence,
Yes to the committee's recommendations and yes for secret ballots.
Kathy Sullivan. She's still on.
Kathy, she was.
Hi, I'm not muted. It says I'm okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so no to 1, no to special ballots, and yes to everything else.
Okay, no to 1 and no to special ballots. No to term limits and no to special ballots and yes to everything else. Okay.
Right.
Thank you. Eugene, you? Eugene? Still on?
I don't see him on with us.
Okay. Then I will move on. Thanks. Susan Whitmer?
He was muted. He was talking.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes. I couldn't see. I can't see the window. Yeah.
Okay. Yes on all except secret ballots.
Okay, great. Thank you. Susan Winberg?
No to 1, no to secret ballots, yes to the rest.
No to 1, no to secret ballots, and yes to everything else. Okay, great. Thank you. Anthony Wong?
Yes to all.
Thanks. And Adam Zeldin?
No to secret ballots, yes to the rest.
No to secret ballots. Okay, let me look at what we have here. So for, hold on, let me just okay. For bylaw section 1 term limits, we have 33 for, 9 against, 1 abstain, and 0 recusal. For bylaws section 2, we have 42, section 2 as a whole, election of officers, 42 for, 0 against, 1 abstain, and 0 recusal. For bylaw section 2, election of officers, the secret ballot section, we have 31 for, 11 against, 1 abstention. And for bylaw section 3, electronic voting, we have 43 for, 0 against, 0 abstain, and 0 recusal. Oops, hold on. And then for section 4, just 1 second. We have 42 for special elections, 0 against, 1 abstention, and 0 recusal.
Okay, great. With that said, we have a few more items to vote on. I'm sorry, I should have thought about this earlier, that maybe we should have done this all together, but that seems like it might have been a little bit cumbersome. But we also have before us the omnibus vote on resolutions, which include the SLA licensing committee resolutions, numbers 1 through 12, the landmarks and public aesthetics resolutions, numbers 1 through 4, and the schools and education resolutions, number 1 and 2. Is there any unwillingness to vote on those items?
No.
Or could we simply ask for those who disagree with the omnibus rather than going through everyone who does agree?
That's a good point. You know, let me just put something before the board and see if we have agreement on this. Since we had just considered an extensive roll call vote, we do know who is present, and I don't believe anybody has dropped off the vote since we've taken that vote. And so if there's not an objection, maybe I can get a voice vote. We can vote on the omnibus by voice vote with anybody stating their dissension, abstention, or recusal. Is everybody in favor of that?
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
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 Is there anybody opposed, abstaining, or recusing from voting on the omnibus bill by voice?
No.
Okay, I don't hear anybody. Okay, so all those in favor of the SLA license committees 1 through 12, items, resolutions 1 through 12. Excuse me, the landmarks resolutions 1 through 4, and the schools and education items 1 through 2. All those in favor say yes.
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 Aye.
Yes.
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 Then
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Anybody opposed? Okay, any abstentions or recusals? And Joe, your dog, you know, he's barking. Okay. All right. Okay, so the rest of the resolutions carry unanimously. You know, I just want to conclude this meeting, and again, you know, my thoughts are really about Tom, and I'm really going to miss having Tom on the board. It's something that, you know, he's a very active member of the board, and somebody that transitioning to electronic or, you know, meeting on Zoom really just changed the dynamic with Tom a lot, but I do miss seeing him. And I thought I'd end on that note. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Thanks, Roberta.
Yes.
Okay, thanks
So
everybody.
moved. So moved.
Second. Yeah.
Yep. Good night. Good night.
Au revoir,
everyone.
everybody.
Good night.
Thank you
night.
all.
Thank you so much.
Don't forget to vote.
And to fill out the census.